go.
Good night.
Good night, Mark.
Thank you.
Good night, thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm going to unmute and then I'm going
Okay.
to press record and then we'll
Okay.
be ready to go. So unmuting.
Recording in progress.
All right, we're going to open the meeting at 8:06. We're a little bit late. In accordance with the open meeting law, the board states for the record that this meeting is being recorded by NORCAM and may be recorded by other local media. If we could rise for the flag. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We're going to skip over and go right to our 8 o'clock public hearing. But before we do that, I would first like to apologize for what happened at the last meeting. Not that it was our fault, but we were doing the best we could to control it. We had some pretty lewd and hateful comments that were said. We do have the police investigating it. And again, sorry for anything that was said that was offensive to anyone that was listening. We do apologize for it, and we will be having a discussion later in the meeting about how we are going to handle Zoom going forward. So with that being said,
Madam Chair?
yes.
At the recommendation of the Director of Information Technology, and also after talking to the police, so there are some, you folks are able to access the meeting by Zoom. They should be able to see and hear a video from room 14 as we're speaking now. It is being recorded on Zoom like we normally do. It's also being broadcast on by NORCAM. What is different is folks' ability to unmute themselves and their ability to turn on their camera. That has been suspended
Okay.
at this point in time. The best way to convey something directly, basically to the meeting room is through the chat, which is only able to be a one-on-one chat between the viewer and myself,
Okay.
and I can then relay it back through here. So, just trying to follow some recommended best practices. I think we were all hopeful that we would not have to make those types of adjustments, but unfortunately, given the increasing frequency of some issues interrupting the meetings, we've had to. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Public hearing annual town, oh, wait a minute, that's the wrong one. Is that the right one?
Spring and fall and annual town meeting.
Yeah, okay. Public hearing annual town meeting dates. The North Reading Select Board will hold an in-person and virtual public hearing on February 12, 2024 at 8 p.m. in room 14, Town Hall, 235 North Street, North Reading, Massachusetts, and via virtual technology to receive public input on selecting dates for the spring and fall annual town meetings in accordance with the North Reading Home Rule Charter 2-4-1. The hearing may be accessed virtually as follows: via the internet or Zoom with the meeting ID, via telephone, and I guess that's it. Okay.
Madam Chair, I just have a quick question. So if we're having a public hearing,
Yeah.
a public meeting where they've been invited to participate via Zoom, but they can't, the only way to communicate is through the chat?
They can chat.
Through you, Madam Chair,
Yes.
so the chat will signal me to try to work through providing access to the extent that we can for folks to participate. That's sort of the thinking right now. So if somebody sends a chat message, they're looking to be recognized. I think I've got it down that we can unlock their ability to speak and be heard, but we're gonna have to see. But that's the intention
So,
for tonight.
for those on Zoom, be patient. We are really just trying to protect the meeting and, stop that kind of hateful talk being said publicly. Could we do a quick, like, explain, maybe some people won't know where to find the chat on there?
There should be a bar on the bottom that it's where you would unmute yourself or you would turn your video on. If you don't see the words chat on it, go over to where it says more. There's 3 dots. You click on that, it should give you the option to send a chat message. There's also I believe, a reactions page that might also be under more. You can select raise your hand. That will also flag that you're looking to be recognized to speak in this hearing, and we'll do our best to work through getting folks access to the extent that they are requesting.
Thank you. Okay.
To me, Madam Chair? Thank you. We have prepared a motion accordingly, but we have reviewed with the town clerk and discussed the schedule for activities in the middle high school. We're recommending the select board vote to schedule the spring annual town meeting for Monday, June 10th, which is the second Monday in June and is the week following the so-called senior week activities, including the senior prom and the associated grand march, which takes place the Monday evening of that week. So we're recommending June 10th for the spring annual to the fall annual town meeting, Monday, October 7th. That's the first Monday of the month. That does not conflict with religious or state or federal holiday. We're also recommending those dates. And again, there is a motion that's been prepared, and we ask the board to consider it.
Okay, Madam Chair, in accordance with the Town of North Reading Charter, Section 241, I move to set the dates for the 2024 town meetings as follows: Monday, June 10th, 2024, and Monday, October 7th, 2024.
Second.
All right, I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? Yep, Mr. O'Leary?
We need to have the public hearing first, see if there's any input.
Oh, sorry, yeah, well,
You know,
okay,
you want
sorry.
Public input,
Jumping the
then the
gun.
board, then we close the public hearing, and then we deliberate.
That's going to be my comment. See if you want to solicit any comment in that. Then close the hearing.
All right, is there anyone in the room that would,
We'll talk about the date.
what's that?
No.
Did you want to say
Talk
something?
about the date.
Is there anyone trying to get on chat?
I don't see any messages coming through on chat, and I do not see what appear to be any raised hands. She's not asking.
All
I
right.
think we're all set. I don't see
Okay.
anyone seeking right now.
Any of the board members?
Madam Chair, I move to close the public hearing, then we can deliberate.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion to close the public hearing, and I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Mr. O'Leary?
So now we have the motion.
Now I'll do it again. Madam Chair, in accordance with the Town of North Reading Charter, Section 241, I move to set the dates for the 2024 town meetings as follows: Monday, June 10th, 2024, Monday, October 7th, 2024.
Second again.
Okay, I have a motion and I have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Done deal.
See, I just had a premonition that nobody was going to have anything to say.
Madam Chair, through you.
Yes.
Could I ask if we could consider signing the presidential primary election warrant next, only because the town clerk is on virtually and because the constable is also present here in the
Yeah.
audience.
Okay. Where are we here? What number is that?
7.
7. All right.
I'm going to ask the town clerk to unmute. Susan, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Clear.
Okay.
Can you see?
I'm here.
Can you see the?
Mike, can I share my screen with you?
You are not going to be able to share your screen, but I will share my screen with the items that you conveyed to to Ms. McNeil. So,
Okay.
I'm going to share right now. Okay. Susan, can you see the calendar?
Yes, I see the calendar.
And I know there was another
So
tab.
can we go to the town clerk's website page
Yes.
first? So over under news and announcements on the right-hand side, I posted everything and anything that one would need to know for the March 5th presidential primary election. So you can click on the first one, February 24th voter registration deadline. Okay, so that is the deadline to change anything to do with the voter registration, to register to vote, your address, your party. This is a primary, so a lot of people are changing their party for the upcoming primary. So this is the deadline to do so. And if you click on this link here, see after it says visit, click on the link, that's a live link. Click on that, so right there, you can pre-register to vote if you're 16, and this is where you can update, all your voter information. I urge everybody to do it sooner rather than later, because obviously after the deadline, it's a strict deadline, we can't change anything. So you can go back, you can check your voter registration information anytime, it's the bottom box. You need to change your name, address, party, everything is right here. If you can go back, Mike, to the news and announcements, please. All right, the next one down, March 5th presidential primary election Q&A. You're going to see this for every single election. So this answers every question you might have to do with this particular election. So you can click, you can view your ballots. If you click on that link there, and then you got to go over to the news and announcements, it's right there. These are all your ballots for the upcoming election. There's 3 parties. You got the Democratic Party, the Republican, and the Libertarian. So if you are enrolled in a party, you have to take that party's ballot. If you're independent, we have a large number of independent voters. Do have a choice of one of these 3 ballots. And it always comes up, if you're independent and you choose a party, you automatically go back to independent. Can you go back, Mike, please? All right, so click back on the Q&A. So you already went over that. So this is everything that I could think of that comes up for an election. You already went to the register to vote. The deadline is February 24th. By law, it's 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The town clerk's office will be open that day. We are also going to be started in-person early voting on February 24th to March 1st, and I'll get into that. So anybody can come in on Saturday, February 24th for walk-ins if they want to. You can drop off ballots then, change your voter registration, or vote in person. You can scroll up a little bit. I'm not going to go over every single one of these. Scroll down, I'm sorry. Go to, so Secretary Galvin, I'm sure you've all seen those postcards, those lovely postcards that we received in the mail. We have in the office, we received about 1,800. So the ballots are going to be going out, we're closed tomorrow, so we're going to go out Wednesday. If you want an early mail-in application, you can go on to Secretary Galvin's website, you can come into the office. There's many ways to get an application. These questions go over if you're in the military or a citizen residing overseas. They are the only ones that can vote federally electronically. You can scroll down a little bit, Mike. So see here, you click on this link, how to track your ballot. Every single ballot that we mail out of the office is recorded into the computer. So we have to enter when we mail a ballot, we have to enter when we receive the ballot. So this is where you can track your ballot. We can go back one, please. And you can drop your ballot off. You can drop it off in the 24-hour box. You can come into the office and drop it off, hand deliver it. You can mail it. Let's see, if you have a disability, there's a link there if you're a disabled voter. You can click on that, Mike. If I have a disability, how may I obtain a ballot? Click on that link. So there are ways that one can vote if you are disabled federally. So here's all the information on that. You can click back. So the census went out, and I always tell everybody, if you do not return your census, you're going to be made inactive. And it has everything to do with voting. And if you don't return your census, or if you don't have any activity for so many years, you're made inactive. And I tell people, it takes longer to receive a ballot. You have to prove you live in town, you have to sign an affidavit. So I urge, residents to return your absentee, your census, your annual census, sorry. You can go back one. So Mike, if you could go to the calendar, the home calendar, and at the bottom, beginning with February 24th, is the voter registration deadline, so you click on that on February 24th. So everything is there that you need for voter registration. The link is there to bring you to register to vote, change anything to do with your voter registration. You click back to the calendar. So in-person early voting begins also February 24th. So if you click on any of these, okay, here's the schedule, and we're going to begin, by law we have to begin the Saturday, February 24th. We have to be open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. anyway, so the last day to register to vote. And then it goes through March 1st. So it ends at 1 p.m. on March 1st. So there's an attachment here also, if you can click on it and print it on the bottom if people want to print it out, or you can go to the calendar and see all the dates. And I don't know if you've noticed, but we are going to be open 2 nights, the Tuesday and the Thursday, 8 to 8. So you have many options to vote. Mail-in, absentee voting, you need an excuse for absentee voting. You have until noon time the day before the election, over the counter. You can do mail-in, you can do in-person early voting. And when in-person early voting ends on March 1st, your only other option is to go to the polls on election day, March 5th. So the polls will be open as usual, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And that's it. So before you have the presidential primary warrant in front of you that we need signed, and the constable will post. Any questions? Of course, any questions, call town clerk's office or email me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It is the election yet, as you know. At a time.
Madam Chair, I believe a motion is provided.
Madam Chair, I move to sign the March 5th, 2024 presidential primary election warrant.
Second?
Okay, I have a motion, I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Susan.
All right, thank you. Good night.
Thank you, good night, stay safe tomorrow. All right, we can move on to, up to board member reports. We'll start with you, Mr. O'Leary, and we'll do old and new business also.
Just want to reference some correspondence that board members and the administration got from Superintendent David DeBarry from the Northeast Metropolitan Regional Vocational School District. I mentioned it a few weeks ago, but this is like official notification that through the efforts of the Regional School Committee, the building committee there, the superintendent administration, and legislative delegations within the district, they have secured some additional funding for the school. So just as a recap, they successfully fought for and increased the reimbursement rate of from 63.34% to 76.84%, resulting in a $23,851,919 savings to the cities
What?
and towns. $23 million savings. Most recently, the district was also successful in achieving in addition to the maximum potential grant from the MSBA of an additional $22,531,223. So combined, $46.4 million estimated local share reduction from
Wow.
the initial MSBA approval phases presented. So that's a 23% savings to all the communities
That's
on the
amazing.
project. But again, the project is underway, it's ongoing,
Yeah.
and through their efforts and the efforts of the legislative delegation, they've been successful in obtaining an additional $46 million to help reduce the cost to all the communities. So Superintendent DeBarry and our Representative Judy Diamond, who's the Vice Chair of the Building Committee there, and the rest of the committee members there, their efforts, I just want to make sure they don't go unnoticed and underappreciated. And again, it certainly is going to mean significant savings to all of the cities and towns within the district. So just want to congratulate them for their efforts, wish them much success.
Yeah,
in the
that's
building
unheard of.
project. And it's a huge achievement, so.
Yeah, it is. It's not often we hear something like
So that's all
that.
very good news, and I can congratulate them for their efforts, and thank them for their efforts, and congratulate them on their success. And hopefully everything comes in on time. And with that, I'm just going to end it.
Ah.
That was good enough.
And with the good news.
And then with the good news. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Wallner?
Can't top that.
Oh, wow. Mrs. Minipelli?
Me neither, I can't top that, but I do want to say congratulations to Notorious, this high school a cappella group. They're moving along and moving on. They won a competition a couple of weekends ago. They won last evening. They got 4 out of the 5 judges award for their performance. And it was done in time for everyone to leave and go watch the Super Bowl. So,
Oh, wow.
Things done.
so very exciting.
Wow.
Anything else?
No, I'm glad to hear that news.
Yeah, very. Mr. Studo?
Just like to applaud of what can be achieved when things are done in time. Thank you.
Okay. Well, I have a lot to say. I can't top that, but I still have a lot to say. Board member reports. The Community Impact Team is having a showing of Beautiful Boy, which is a
It's a good movie.
true story about a father and son relationship with drugs, and it is very good. So they are having a viewing of that on Wednesday, February 28th. They're also including a dinner with that if you'd like it, from 5 to 7. And then the movie will be shown at 7, and there'll be discussion afterwards. And that will be in the distance learning lab at the high school, middle and high school. So you can go online. You can go on to their Facebook page, their social media. They have a QR code. I don't know if I'm holding that in the right place. They have a QR code, so I printed it out so I could do the QR code so you can register. They're getting very technological. So that's a great opportunity to watch a great movie and have great discussion and even get a dinner. So they also...
It's based on a true story, too. Did you
Yes, it
already say
is.
that?
It is a true story, yeah. Yeah.
Bring your Kleenex.
Yeah, bring your Kleenex, absolutely. Also, they are having a school-sponsored parent event Thursday, March 7th with Dr. Englander, who will present on bullying and cyberbullying, social media, and cell phone use. Peabody Court Housing Authority continues to do interviews for the director position. But in the meantime, the interim director, Lisa Cortello, is available and keeping things going. Old and new business, I had the privilege of accompanying the Chief Stats and Chief Zimmerman and the town administrator to Middleton for a ceremonial signing of the Regional 911 agreement. We got a tour of the facility. It's really amazing. And there was an open invitation to all the members. Anytime you want to go and you want to go have a tour, they'd be happy to show you around, and it's worth seeing. It's really
So when is that going to be
impressive.
implemented?
Mr. Gilberto?
Through you, Madam Chair. So we're looking at roughly September of next year. So not this coming September, but about 18 months or so out. Was the timeline that we were looking at. We're sort of in line and being onboarded, and there are improvements that they need to make there, some staff capacity, technology that they are working through with the state to be ready for us. So there is an implementation timeline that calls for go live in September of 2021.
And they're very enthusiastic, and it was a great meeting. It really was. They're happy to have us on board, and more than happy. They would love for anybody who wants to come in and see it to come and see it. Also, I've been informed that we have 3 negotiations coming up, so we need volunteers from the board for NRAS, DPW, and the library. I know all of our schedules are tight. I know you're already on 2.
I'm on 2, yep.
I'm on 1. You're on 1. So we're going to need, do we need 2 on each of those, or can it? We generally have 2?
Even if only one is able to attend at times.
Yeah.
We try to accommodate both, but having 2 means let's get 1.
So I know in the past, I know that I was part of NRAS and DPW. Kate, I think you were in library.
Yes.
Would you want to do that again?
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else want to take library?
Didn't we just do library last year? And DPW last year?
This is further back than that.
Yeah.
And there was a...
Time
they were here
flies.
1 year.
You've been around longer than you think.
It feels like last year.
It does feel like
it just
last
happened.
year.
Is that 2022 then?
It's like a continuous negotiation.
But it was probably catching up a year or 2.
Is that something we need immediate, or can we all look at our schedules and maybe next meeting?
We can reconvene with that, just would love to have coming out next week.
Would they start in like,
If not sooner.
what month?
I think we're hopeful to start at least one in March. We have others that are ongoing as the other program.
I think were you and I on DPW? Or was it you and I?
The original I was.
The
but there was a
original, and then you
DPW
were on the
in
next one. Yeah.
That was on the old one 2 years ago. At the same time, I was on library.
Right,
So they're both up again, yeah. And then NRAS was you and I.
yes, I
Yeah.
think so, yeah.
All right, so if we, food for thought, think about it next meeting if you want to step up for something, you know, see what we can do. All right, and
Span the select board to 7, so we can handle all this stuff.
I know I know, it's not easy. All right, that's it for me. So we can move on to dollars for scholars. Vote to approve proclamation.
Yeah, GFU. Dollars for Scholars has a conflicting planning meeting going on this evening, so they were not able to send a representative, but we wanted to comply and have this on the agenda to get it out to the public prior to the week occurring, which is going to be referenced in the proclamation. I think they were hoping the board member might offer some comments with regard to the program and to the extent possible, so to be not sure if someone's willing to.
Sure.
Mr. O'Leary?
Someone.
I'm happy to be that someone. And I don't have the numbers, but I think they finally surpassed, what is it, $1 million or something since inception. It's been started in the early 60s with a few volunteers and has grown over the years significantly and has, I forget how many thousand, 20-some-odd thousand students have benefited from Dollars for Scholars, North Dollars for Scholars. It was a Citizens Scholarship Foundation originally. And these people work tirelessly. So on what day, what week, March 11th through March 14th, they're going to be doing their annual phone-a-thon, where they're going to be calling the households in North Reading and asking people to contribute. I, for one, my wife and I can gratefully acknowledge, that our 2 boys did benefit from the Dollars for Scholars and over the years, and it certainly helps defray the cost. The cost of education, higher education these days, is significant. When you get your first tuition bill as a parent, it looks like a telephone number, and it's very scary. And you say, how are we going to do this?
Yeah.
And Mrs. Manupelli, you're going through it right now. With how many, 2 in college or 3? 3. God bless you. So you see these bills, and every bit helps.
Yeah.
Go for $25, $100 or more, that's great. There are a number of people throughout the community who have served the community over the years, where they have endowment funds, so you can actually target it towards certain people. If you recall, just recently, in not too distant past, Gene Jones and Brad Jones have recently passed away, who were founding members of CSF, who were the parents of, say, Representative Brad Jones. There are endowment funds for them. It's an endowment fund with my father's name on it. So just look through the list, but answer the phone. Answer the phone and give generously, because it goes to local students and it helps out significantly. So we certainly support and endorse the efforts of the Dollars for Scholars here in North Reading. Appreciate all that they've done over the years and what they continue to do, and would urge you to answer the phone and be generous. Mrs. Lady Belly has her hands up.
Mrs. Manupelli?
I always ask this too, whenever they do
So it's-
present their website. You can donate online as well, not only over the phone, but they have a website. I'm looking that up right now. because
So they do have a website, but from March 11th to March 14th, the students will be calling and asking. So Mrs. Manupelli will get the website.
So do they call just the landlines?
For the most part, I think that's what they have, unless they have some other
Yeah.
phones on record.
So I'm sure that they've struggled with that, going forward. Less and less people have a landline. So, it's good information to have that website
Yeah, but it's
that,
not $30
you don't have to wait for the phone call if you want to get on the website and donate.
Don't they send a letter to every household too? I think they do.
no, I don't think so.
They don't?
I've never gotten one.
I vaguely seem to remember that, but maybe I'm wrong.
DollarsForScholars.org, donate.
DollarsForScholars.org. Donate.
NorthReading.DollarsForScholars.org.
Yeah, NorthReading.DollarsForScholars.org.
And then it just, there's a tab.
tabs there, so donate student.
We're all donating right
How to
now.
apply. And again, for those of you who are listening and you have,
Where's my wallet?
you have
I
students
feel
or
like
your children or grandchildren, you know,
I feel like Jerry Lewis.
yeah, you can apply right online. You can apply
Come
right
on
online.
down here, bring it with
So,
you.
yeah, so just go to the website, North Reading Dollars for Scholars, and there's a link for you to donate, to apply, answer all your frequently asked questions, and from the 11th to the 14th, they'll be making the phone calls.
Great, and we have a proclamation to read. Do you want to read that,
Somewhere.
Mr. O'Leary?
I don't have
I
the
have one.
proclamation.
Do you want it?
I have the motion. There it is, Steve.
So, Madam Chair. Oh, you have a motion? Why don't you make
I have the motion.
Why don't you make the
But
motion,
for sure.
we'll vote on it, and then we'll read it.
Okay, I got it. Madam Chair, I move to proclaim March 11th through 14th, 2024 as North Reading Dollars for Scholars Week.
And I'll second that, and I'll read the proclamation.
Oh, you beat me.
Okay, she can second. Mrs.
I
Mitchell.
Got it.
I have a motion, and I have a second by Mrs.
Madam Chair,
Minipelli.
the proclamation is whereas the North Reading Dollars for Scholars is a group of hardworking, dedicated individuals, and whereas the North Reading Dollars for Scholars members have devoted both time and talent to the difficult task of seeking scholarship funds for deserving students, and whereas the North Reading Dollars for Scholars is planning its annual phone-a-thon for the week of March 11th through 14th, 2024, where high school students will contact all North Reading homes by phone and mail, seeking pledges to the North Reading Dollars for Scholars Scholarship Fund. Now therefore, we, the Select Board of North Reading, do hereby proclaim the week of March 11th through 14th, 2024 as North Reading Dollars for Scholars Week, and urge all citizens to open their hearts and their purses to the benefit of North Reading students who want to continue their education. Under the signature of Leanne Gonzalez, Chair, Select Board.
Nice.
Bravo.
All in favor? Aye.
Good to sign that. Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
All right, and then we will move on to review fiscal year 2021 and 2022 audits.
Madam Chair, through you, it's that time of year where we talk about the town's budget, financial planning, leading up to the June town meeting where the town's annual budget will be held. Before we get to that, we are in a bit of arrears with reviewing prior fiscal year audits that have been completed under Mrs. Galvin's oversight over the past 9 months or so, roughly, for fiscal year 2021 and 2022. Work on fiscal year 2023 is not beginning today, I believe, with the
Yes.
auditors
Auditors were in today.
being here. So because we've had a lot going on with regard to closing out a variety of fiscal years, we felt we would offer this opportunity for just a quick overview of these audits for the board and for the community. By no means are we trying to short circuit a direct conversation with the auditors themselves. Our thought was we could invite them when they complete work on the fiscal year 2023 audit later in the spring, I believe. And if there's any questions outstanding on the 21 or 22 audits, they can be discussed at that point in time. Through you, Madam Chair, if it's okay, I will turn it over to the Finance Director who has a PowerPoint presentation that sort of summarizes the input that we got from the auditors. Joe, could I just ask you to wait for back here, and I'll just bring up the presentation later.
Mrs. Galvin, it's all yours.
I can just start. So we had one audit firm for quite a long time, probably about 30 years. It was Dick Hingston from Guisti Hingston. He completed through the 2020 audit. He finished that close to the end of 21. But then he retired, so we had to switch. Melanson was chosen for the fiscal 21 audit. They completed that in April of 23. And then, but in January of 23, they were bought out by NORCAM, Accountants and Advisors. So the personnel is pretty much the same, but it's a different firm. So now NORCAM is also doing our 2023 audit. We've been uploading documents for the past several months, and then today they came in to start. So it's quite a different process than it used to be. Dick Hingston would come in, run a number of reports himself, ask us a lot of questions, walk through the office, that type of thing. Through COVID, everything has changed. Everything is you're uploading, and you spend very little time with them. But so they got through both audits. Mike, you can move to the next one, please. There were no actual material findings. Everything they found was just more small discoveries that they call immaterial in nature, but they made recommendations. So those are the ones I'm going to go through right now. The first one being there are a number of capital projects that are on our books that have been there a number of years. Some were funded from free cash and available funds like retained earnings. Others are from bond proceeds. So I went through all of them in partnership with the department heads. I sent them reports. All of the ones that have been funded from free cash and retained earnings have either, there's a spending plan, or I closed them out as of June 30th. So I closed about $400,000 to free cash as of June 30th, 23. All of those that are funded from bond proceeds, again, I've been sending reports to departments. We've determined either a spending schedule. Anything below $50,000 that they're not going to spend can be reappropriated with a vote of the Board of Selectmen. So I will be bringing a report to the Selectmen in the next, Select Board, sorry, in the next couple of months. So you can vote to use that money for debt service, and then anything left over in debt service would be closed out to free cash, the current appropriation. Anything over $50,000 has to be reappropriated. And it has to be reappropriated to either a like term or longer. So we've really been going through everything, and really anything with bond proceeds is supposed to be spent within 2 years of the borrowing, so you don't run into an arbitrage situation where the interest you're earning having that money in a bank unspent isn't, so that it isn't more than what you're receiving on the bond or paying on the bond. But so believe it or not, we've had to have that checked because some of our accounts are so old. But we're going through that whole process now, so we are cleaning those up. The next item was a very minor issue. It was a signatory issue. Some of this is a difference between auditors and opinions. Through Dick Hingston, the process was we don't have every invoice signed. We do a summary bill schedule that lists all those invoices, and then that is what's signed. On those, if a department head was being reimbursed for something that they spent their own money, say they were going to a conference and paid themselves, were getting reimbursed, they were signing the bill schedule. But because either I sign the warrant or the select board signs the warrant, that was okay. This group of auditors wants someone else signing that bill schedule. So if there's a division head, they sign, or if there isn't a division head for that department, the town administrator is supposed to sign. Sometimes if there's an assistant, or like in the case of the police department, the lieutenants can sign. Someone else has to approve the purchase. And they are very stringent on wanting signatures. They pretty much want them on every invoice, so we will have to implement that, but it's a matter of opinion. They are just very formal in terms of the whole process. Next slide. Yes, sorry. So this one is on all journal entries, similar. They want signatures or approvals on everything. We do already have a formal process of filling out a form or making a request for journal entries when you're making a correction, say you charge a payroll to the wrong account, that type of thing. They want a hierarchy. The situation in our town is there's no one above me. I do most of the journals. We only have 4 or 5 people who do journals, the treasurer, me, the assistant treasurer, but they want multi-level approvals. Again, it was never an issue under the previous auditor. They want us to try to establish checks and balances, and they even want us to try to establish a workflow in Munis. So some of that I have to learn how to program it. What they want will make it work. It's just between signing every invoice and signing all of these journals, it's a lot of time spent for department heads that are just trying to get their daily job done. And it's just a lot, but they insist on it. The next item, they would like us to check with the banks occasionally to see if there's anyone using our employee identification numbers. Sometime groups like friends of organizations or parents organizations will try to use our tax ID with accounts. So they want us to formally, check that, the bank statements aren't going somewhere else and yet they're listed under our tax ID. So again, the treasurer has started to do that and she will continue to do that. Next slide. Again, cash, this makes it sound like we don't reconcile cash or reconcile our receivables. We do reconcile every month. We have always done it. In fact, Dick was the one who taught me how to do it. Again, they want us to print the reconciliation and have 2 people sign it. The treasurer sign it and I sign it. It's paper. and all of these things, every journal entry, everything we do, it's in Munis. We have to log in to do it, so it's attached. No one else can log in as me. Things that they want, we have to do it. But I want everyone to know we do reconcile cash receivables. It's one of the foundations that Marianne and I have done for years. So the next one is for our fixed assets. They would like us to find a software that can track our fixed assets. We use a spreadsheet right now. It was designed by Dick Hingston himself. We had some issues in the last couple of years that since Dick left, one of our staff members wasn't completely trained on how to handle the fixed assets. Dick used to do the depreciation and some of the steps himself. So it was a matter of, we just weren't aware of what he did. So it was a learning process for us. But they would like us to get a more formal system that can handle it for us. Munis, I have been told, does have a module. I don't know the cost yet, so we are going to be looking at that and a few other packages to see what's really necessary or if we can really get a handle on it and improve the way we do it ourselves. I really think it was a training issue. And then the next item, they would like us to perform internal audits of our departmental receipts when departments collect money, for building permits, selling recycling bins, those types of things. The treasurer has performed these audits herself in the past. She just has to try to do it more regularly, so that is something that we are going to institute. Next slide, please. And then the last item is the single audit. The single audit is separate from the annual audit. It is required for any expenditure of federal awards of over $750,000. So in the last few years, we have actually received, the school's always received a lot of funds, but with us it was started with the CARES Act and then the ARPA funds. We did not have our own, the town side did not have a federal grant policy manual. The school did. So up until the CARES Act happened and we received a sizable reimbursement, it was always okay to say we use the same policy as the school department. Well, once the municipalities started receiving a lot of funds, they wanted the communities to have their own separate policy. I've already written it. It was a template. We had to fill out parts ourselves, to customize it for our own community. But it was a finding both for 21 and 22, because by the time they audited 21, 22 was already over, So it was a 2-year finding, but we've corrected it.
So, Madam Chair, through you to the Finance Director. So I think the next slides go into the grant policy, which is the next agenda item. So I don't know if it,
We'll be voting on this shortly.
yes. So I don't know if we want to, do you have any further information on the
No,
audit?
does anyone have any questions on,
And again, just
The
for the
audits?
record, for anyone who's just tuning in,
Yeah.
we normally have the auditor here, but 2 audits at once. We're giving you the select board has the reports, the detailed accounting, which I believe are all public records. We're providing, what the recommendations are. We can certainly forward any questions that come up to the auditors and have them speak to them when they return for the fiscal year 2023 audit. Thank you.
Any questions from the board?
Just a comment, I did happen to, believe it or not, read through them.
My God.
Wow.
It's a sickness.
No, only because I used to
Is
do
it
this
200
stuff.
pages?
I used to do this stuff for a living, so I said, let's
Right.
see what they have here. It really-
It's
there were
fun
no-
for him.
Really, the findings were immaterial. So, so congratulations to you and your staff. And, I mean, this was through the pandemic, with the transition.
Yeah.
The finance director and everything that was on your plate. Again, very minor, immaterial, so congratulations to you.
Thank you.
And your staff. And my condolences to you to having to entertain these people almost year-round now, so.
third one in a year, it's a lot.
Yeah, but, and I also read your responses and on target. So, congratulations to you, and again, I feel your pain. Because I used to inflict it. So.
And I'm going to take Mr. O'Leary's word for it.
Yeah. My wife said, what are you reading? I said, don't ask.
We were very lucky to have you be able to step in to this position, so much appreciated.
Can I just ask one question? I know they're pushing all this manual paperwork, extra load on it. I mean, can we push back a little bit on that stuff when it's just not, if it's already being monitored by some other method, can we do something to push back on that and not just roll over when they say we have to do it?
Right, I would probably end up scanning anything in, like I wouldn't be saving paper, or maybe we'd sign through DocuSign, we'd find a way to keep it electronically, because we don't even have the file space, paper file space, or you sign it and then you lose it. But in a lot of these instances, the way we were uploading documents, they weren't asking us for the backup document. So in a lot of instances, I felt like, wait a minute, you're making this sound like we don't document things, but we do. We already had it. It was just, we didn't have the next level signature. And like I said, there isn't anyone. I even said, I discussed it with them today before I presented, and I said, I just want to check on this. Who is supposed to sign for me? There isn't anyone. And for me to take it to the treasurer to sign, she wouldn't know
Right.
what journals I was doing. So they do understand, and as I learn where they're coming from, I can push back a little more once I'm a little more secure myself.
Okay.
The first couple of audits with a new firm, you're afraid to push, but then when you realize, some of the things they're asking and how in some ways it doesn't make sense, then you're more apt to be able to push back.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're trying to drop their liability on you
Right,
as
right.
much as possible, and they don't have any concern about how much it cost you in time. They only care about getting out of their baskets. So, yeah, if we can push back on those kind of things, I mean, if it's redundant, it doesn't, it's not helpful.
Yeah, right.
Anyways.
Ms. Minipelli?
Just another shift of perspective on that, though. I think that the act of having to actually sign and take a moment and stop and look at what is signed versus just kind of putting a signature in the software means something. It means a level of oversight. That's what it means. So it's necessary for us. Not that they're just trying to dump something, but they're trying to warn us that active step has to be taken, and that's a little bit more of an oversight than just, okay, your signature's next year, so you're
Right.
actually actively reading it
Right.
to make sure it's what you need to sign and approve.
Right, and especially in offices where it's bigger and people aren't in close proximity. We are so close, and our office area is so open that we work in partnership all the time, so we all really kind of know what's going on. So some of this seems second nature to us. But I can see in a different type of environment
Yeah.
where those signatures are really
Right.
necessary.
You are authorized to sign certain things that the treasurer wouldn't sign, and the treasurer is authorized to sign things that you shouldn't be signing.
Right.
That's just the checks and balances that they're trying to work in here, which is probably already exists, with the software, but it's actively making you all think about what you're signing. Then you're scanning it in and saving a digital copy
Right,
anyway.
right, we have to.
I think it's a good change. It's a good oversight. Even if it wastes a little bit of paper, it's a good oversight for you. Thanks.
I'm not going to give you the lecture as to the necessity for all of this, but that's okay. And again, it is somewhat redundant in some stages, but again, it's responsibility, accountability, and assessing the responsibility, centering it somewhere so that someone is accountable if something goes awry. That's all. And it's been signed off. And whether it becomes redundant for you, it's still at some point it clicks with the individual saying, okay, I really should take a look at this stuff once in a while anyway.
Right.
And even though working with you right next door. So,
Yeah, I remember one year with the prior auditor, we are supposed to sign the payroll, and that's another level of oversight we're actually supposed to go through. We trust what's coming to us, that it's accurate, but, or the invoicing that's sent, but if there's a question, we bug the TA about it. Wait a minute, what is this? Why is it here? To get an explanation for it. But
again, some of us will just spot check.
yes, yeah.
I don't go through every line item and say, how much overtime was that? But we get the report. I mean, in years past, the reason that you get the reports that you do each week is because in years past, there were some questions on members of the board as far as even specifically overtime and things of that nature.
Yes.
So that we ask
You're
them to
aware.
make it aware, give it to us before you give us the payroll, so we can take a look at it, so when we sign off, we know what we're doing. We know what we're signing off on.
But three of you always
level.
sign. So
And it's always us.
it's always the same three of you that sign. Once three sign, that's
Anyway,
Okay, all set?
thank you, yes.
I'm going to stop signing.
And we're, I know, every now and then I wonder, what if I don't sign? How long will this take?
Yeah.
Probably payroll.
what's going to happen
when I was
is
away,
the other
who
members
signed?
will get a call.
Yeah, because when I was away, I wasn't signing it. Who jumped in there, but, where are we moving? We're moving on
The
to,
federal return policy.
okay.
And Madam Chair, it's actually in the slides that Mr. Lucas will continue to go through.
You can go to the next slide. So this just lists some of the things that are in the federal grant manual. We have to set up those checks and balances. A lot of it that I had to customize was who is responsible for what role. Like, is the finance director doing it? Is their designee doing it? Setting up the accounts in the accounting system, how the cash flow will work, like is it a reimbursable grant where you have to spend first, submit for reimbursement, whose responsibilities is it to do each of those steps, those types of things, for the monitoring and the reporting responsibility, determining the allowable costs. A lot of the grants have guidelines, but sometimes when they're certain language is absent, maybe about travel policies or credit card use, meal allowances, things like that. A lot of those reiterate our own policies, some of which are, on the old side, but for now, they're in there, they can be updated, but things like that. There's program income, which really doesn't impact us. Sometimes grants can be used to run programs that generate income, and then how those funds will be reported and used, that's an element that has to be in the policy. How you will inventory assets that are purchased, or what you do if items are lost or they were stolen, that type of thing. What's the period of performance of the grant? Are there deadlines? Their grants might expire at the end of the fiscal year or on a calendar year basis. Making sure that, if the funds aren't going to be spent, that, say, the finance director meets with the department head, comes up with a spending plan, or who's responsible for asking for an extension, those types of things. Another element is the procurement. What are the procurement policies? Generally, they follow the typical town or municipal policies that we all have to follow for, state guidelines of going out to bid, things like that, but they have to be in the policy. And then another item is guidelines for awards to sub-recipients. We don't tend to, turn our grants over to anyone else gives sub-awards, but sometimes, the federal grants do have those items. So these are just generally the things that are in the manual that you will see. If anyone has any questions on it or feels that anything, should be updated or changed or whatever, you can just let me know. The auditors know that it's in progress. We just hope to have it done so that, there isn't a finding on the 23 audit. And again, it was pretty much a template. In fact, the school department had their own policy. They sent it over to me. I got a municipal template from one of our other consultants, CLA Connect, who has helped me on, closing the books and the free cash certification. It was the identical, template that they gave me. So it's a very common one across municipalities. So it pretty much has all the guidelines in it. And I just had to customize certain sections for North Reading.
Good job.
Madam Chair, through you, there is a motion to approve the first reading for policy. Should it pass, then we intend to come back to the next meeting for a second and final.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move to approve the first reading of the federal grant policy for the municipal departments of the town of North Reading.
Second?
All right, I have a motion and I have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
And that brings us to, where are we now? I'm jumping around. We did fiscal year 2025?
That's where we're at right now.
That's where we're at now.
Madam Chair, through you, I'm going to share on the screen for those looking at Zoom, those who are on NORCAM, and those in the room here, the fiscal year 2025 revenue and expense plan that was submitted to the select board for their review in advance of the meeting. I believe it's identical to the version that was reviewed at the last financial planning team meeting last Monday. I do see we have one member of the financial planning team and one alternate member of the financial planning team here, Mr. Buckley and Mr. Keller. Thank you both for being here and for making yourselves available for the financial planning team meetings. I will share that document, Joe, and ask, actually, you may come up, right?
Is anybody else freezing?
Yes,
I'm
It's
freezing.
getting chilly.
Joe?
air conditioners on.
Thank you. So I'm casting onto the screen up in the front here and also through Zoom a revenue and expense plan that I'm going to ask the finance director to walk through. Those who follow the municipal budget process, this is normally the time of year where we're having this level of discussion of the budget overall, where things stand for both our fixed costs for our school and for our municipal department budgets. I should also note that we are joined via Zoom by the superintendent of schools, Dr. Daly, and by Superintendent Rich Real, who just signed on as well. Both active participants in the finance committee team as well. I know Mrs. Hurlbut from the finance committee would be here. She could be. She's really traveling, but I know she would be here as well. But it's okay. I'll turn it over to you, Korean.
Okay. So the 2024 column is as we voted at town meeting, appropriations and revenue, as we showed on the 2024 recap sheet. The 25 columns, we have two different scenarios. The projected budget one has all the fixed costs, like a transfer from the capital improvement stabilization for debt service. It funds the annual retirements, both school and town, from free cash. I'm sorry, no, this one, budget one does not. Budget one has everything in as if they're not funded from free cash. So it's the full expense is in against our existing revenues. So it would be retirements, snow and ice deficit, capital projects. We typically fund $250,000 to $350,000 from, we would like to fund it from the operating budget, and then debt service. So projected budget 1 has all of those as if we're going to fund them from existing revenue. Projected budget 2 has all those items moved to either the capital improvement stabilization fund or free cash. So virtually everything else on the revenue side is the same. New growth right now is a conservative estimate until the assessor can review permits and give us a better idea of what she feels might happen this year in new growth. We'll go a little further down.
Where's the new growth number? Is it here?
It's just over 800, about 850, between the Lowell Road and standard new growth. I believe that's one building for, one more building on Martin's Landing for 25. So then on the state aid, that is the governor's budget 1, came out a couple weeks ago. So those are our most recent numbers. They went up slightly from last year. You can scroll. The SBAB reimbursement for the Hood School, which was $243,000. Scroll a little lower. That ends in fiscal '24. The debt service ends as well, so there will not be any more SBA reimbursement. And then the estimated receipts, due to the level of new growth for '24, we lowered these and then raised the provision for abatements to balance for the recap for '24. For '25, we went back to the original projections for '24 on all of the estimated receipts. The only one we lowered slightly was the investment income. So far, interest rates have been holding steady, but because we don't know what's going to happen, we reduced it slightly. But the rest of the numbers are fairly conservative. We watch monthly, the receipts to date, and motor vehicle is hard because that large commitment usually goes out in late February, early March, so the '24 commitment has not gone out yet. We're unsure of what will happen between, the strikes and the economy. We weren't sure if, people are still buying cars. And then the building permits and things have slowed slightly. So, from year to year, it's hard to predict because each year there's something different that takes off. During COVID, it was the building permits. But now it's, other than investment income, we're unsure of what will happen. So this is where you can see the difference, the debt service stabilization fund and projection 1. We are not using any of those funds. Other than that, there was the plan from year to year that we would try to use $1.3 million from the capital improvement stabilization fund against the budget, against debt service. But that is really predicated on whether we have the available free cash to put in the capital improvement stabilization. So this year, we had a healthy free cash number, so we most likely will be putting that in the spring. But, it makes the outcome of the budget is very, very different if we don't have those funds.
Madam Chair, through you, not to interrupt the presentation, but that difference, particularly the debt service stabilization fund and that transfer of $1.3 million that we've been doing this 4th year, 5th year. It's a number of years we've been doing it at this point. It wasn't always that way. it's a significant factor that we rely on to balance the budget, and probably shouldn't have to be. So it's something that it's been important to me to keep in mind in the discussions. Do we really want to continue having to do that move from one year to the next or not? So just something that I just think we need to keep an eye on and consider. When we talk about the budget being balanced, it really has been at least $1.3 million of it has been doing this, which we can lawfully do using a fund that was set up for that purpose. I think the advantage to doing that, that's been the reason the financial planning team has continued to handle the budget this way, is that we're sort of safeguarding if the free cash isn't good enough to do it, we won't do it. And so that could have an impact on that year versus budgeting that we're going to have enough revenue and then that revenue doesn't materialize in that particular fiscal year. That's why we've done it. So, I think we all understand what's going on with it, but for those who are, new to the budget process, it has a significant impact. That $1.3 million, it's like last mile transportation. That last $1.3 million is often the most difficult when we start talking about balancing the budget. So we can talk further after the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll go to the next section, Maria. Expenses.
Right. So these are the fixed cost expenditures. Again, you can see on that top line, the capital improvement plan itself, projection 1, has us funding that through operating revenues, but in the second option, that would be funded from free cash. The Essex Tech and regional school assessments, those are, I believe, actual numbers. We were given the Northeast regional number, I believe, last year. They gave us a couple years, and that includes the capital improvements they had given us at the time. The debt service number is a forecast including everything that we have authorized and unissued. We had a number of projects for fiscal '24 that we carried on a ban, so we will go permanent this spring. So we estimated that pretty much every project has been underway, funds have been spent, so we will probably be going permanent on most of them. So the debt service number, including the roof and short-term interest, is about $1.6 million. So that is about $300,000 over the $1.3 million that we intend to fund from capital improvement stabilization. The other numbers, the snow and ice deficit, we typically carry for fiscal '23, we ended up using $400,000 from free cash. For fiscal '24, we were running pretty well until possibly tomorrow. So we have $450,000 that we set aside in the school retirements and the town retirements, are about another $200,000. Again, in scenario 2, we fund those from free cash. With the snow and ice deficit, we kind of like to see what we end up, how much we end up being over, and fund that so we don't have to raise it on the recap and cut into budgets come, the fall. But it's really tough. It's day to day. Sometimes it doesn't seem like there's snow, but then there's ice. So we try to keep that number as low as we can, but it's probably the end of March, really, before we know what that number is going to be. And then the liability insurance and some of the other items, there are, estimates we've been given. And then the health insurance, we are carrying at 8%, I believe, right now. I have to check 1 second.
For the benefit of the public, we're going through a procurement process that we committed to going through a year ago during the budget discussions, and what we indicated with our insurance advisory committee, so to know what our options would be, and then we'll talk more about that at a future meeting. Madam Chair, if I could just note the line on there for reserve for abatements and exemptions. projections, received was $381,000. It's $450,000 in the projection both columns for this upcoming fiscal year. One of the things that had an impact was the increase in both participation and the amount for the senior tax workout program. So that amount went up to the state law maximum at the town meeting, which is then further increased by state law in December, I think, of last year. So I'm sure we'll be talking about a further increase to that. But that may have an impact here, along with, I know there's work being done by the Taxation Aid Committee about a potential scenario for further senior tax relief. That's the line where the impact happens. It's a fixed cost, meaning it sort of comes off the top before we start talking about what we can use to fund school and municipal operations. Not speaking for or against it, but just recognizing that those discussions will have an impact in that line, and is where that impact comes through. It's already had somewhat of an impact. We'll see what actually materializes in this first year of expanded participation in the tax workout program. It's expanded, not to where it once was, but it's expanded. We'll continue to monitor that, but I just want to highlight that as we have discussions, even in future fiscal years, about relief, how it has an impact.
Will we anticipate those like $60,000 or $65,000, I think, for a town meeting when we're talking about it?
I thought it was a little bit less than that, and we were fortunate that from the revenue side, the state aid number ended up being larger than we were budgeting. So we were able to absorb it on the other side of this spreadsheet, fortunately, for at least for this current fiscal year. Next year, obviously, we'll have to still working through that.
The health insurance is at 8.5.
Thank you.
So down towards the bottom of this, so then we split the town and school fixed costs. And then right here in this segment are where you see the trash fee. Those are items that are revenue just for the town side. The water indirect costs, the trash fee, this ambulance, which offsets the fire budget, cemetery account offsets cemetery parks and grounds, the recreation indirect costs for their Medicare taxes, and then the 104 Lowell Road revolving fund funds inspectional fees related to the Martin's Landing and Pulte. So that comes down to the available funds for the town side, the 18,884,000, and then the 19 million. So you can see the drastic difference in the two numbers under the two scenarios. And if you scroll down a little further, so, and then below, we do the same for the school, so you can see their number. Now, we also show the level services department request for 25, for the town side is 20 million. You went a little below. Right. So the deficit under one scenario, I can't even read that number. My eyes are bad. I need to look at it on the screen. Well, blurry-eyed looking up for a minute. So under one scenario for the town, it's 1.3 million, but under the other scenario, it's 556,000. And for the school department, their level services request is 4 million under one scenario and 2.5 under the other, and that is just the level services. So just for a comparison, below that, we pulled 2023 and 2024, so you can see where we were at the same point. Now, under both the 23 and the 24 scenario, we had done a similar type as the projection 2, where we funded debt service from the capital improvement stabilization, and we moved the other certain fixed costs to free cash. So in 23, the town was facing a deficit of 218,000 before we reached a balanced budget. And in 24, it was 329,000. And again, these are level services requests, and the school department was 221,000 behind in 23, but in 24 was $1 million behind. But again, that was only the level services. the school generally prefers to use their modified budget, and the town, and over the last few years, has tried to add either positions or, different things, increase building maintenance, those types of things. So right now, at the juncture we're at, we're in a worse situation than we've been in the past with just the level services requests across the board, town and school.
So, Madam Chair, through you, we've been talking in budgets, particularly over the past 4 fiscal years. So, sort of that year before, or I guess the year of COVID, 2020, fiscal year 21 process, and then 22 and 23 as well. Last year we added a projection. You may remember the sort of red and green graphs that showed the separation of our revenues from our expenses when we look out into future fiscal years. And you see that was based on looking backwards 20 years where we ended a year ago. Looking forward, the challenges are not just 20 years, but today in terms of where we're at compared to where we've been at in previous fiscal years. And I guess, what I think, I'll speak for the whole financial planning team, we want the community to be aware that, this has been, things are becoming and have become more and more challenging each fiscal year. And it is, largely due to the constraints on our ability to generate revenue. For those who don't know, under Proposition 2.5, are the largest source of revenue for the town. Real estate taxes can increase no more than 2.5% from one year to the next, plus the value of what they call new growth, which is really new construction or renovations. And we've sort of been carried by significant development at Pulte Homes in New England over at the former Berry property. We saw an unexpected uptick in that activity last year as they sort of rushed to finish, I think it was 2 buildings, and we believe they're at 1 building left that we're carrying here to be completed here. So, it's already tight. Once that revenue stream falls off, it becomes even more, more challenging. Things are challenging both for I'll say things are very challenging for both the school and municipal operating budgets looking into fiscal year 2025, as I think, we all discussed and projected they were likely to be a year ago. In the case of the municipal budgets, requests such as additional public safety personnel in the fire department, that's something we've talked about for a number of years. That's a significant expense. I'm always cautious about speaking for the schools and telling their story, but they've had a significant funding source from the federal government that they've relied on that is going to expire, and that they've looked to stretch out over multiple fiscal years in order to try to preserve things in the budget, but that's going to end this current fiscal year. So I'm going to stop for a moment. I know there are folks in the room here who are part of the financial planning team. I don't know whether you want to speak or take comment from them, but I know we try to limit that from the audience, but I think it's important for folks. Anyone who wants to add anything.
Me, I guess I'll stand up.
Well, you came all the way here, you might
I did. Good evening, everyone. I'm Scott Buckley, 5 Alden Street, North Reading. I'm also the chair of the school committee, and so, as Mr. Guevara said very eloquently, we've been working with the finance planning team, Mrs. Gonzalez, Mr. Studo, Mr. Kelleher, Mr. McGowan, and Dr. Daly, who are on there, and Florian as well, and Michael. I think there's a number of challenges happening. I think in the last couple of years, some of the fundamental structural challenges have been here, but they've been hidden by some other things that are happening. New growth has hidden it. I think, as Mr. Guevara said, ESSER funds during COVID hid some of the challenges that we had. Some expenses were just lower during that time, and even outside of ESSER, universal free lunches. There's a lot of things that have been hiding some of the systemic problems that we're facing. And now this year, we're sort of hitting all of those at the same time. And year over year, we have increased the amount of things that we've funded from free cash or used other, debt stabilization funds, and that number continues to have gone up. Even with that, last year, we cut positions on the school side because we didn't have enough revenue to cover that, and so there were fewer positions this year than there were the year before. And just looking at the coming years, in addition to the things we've talked about, everybody also sees the labor market and the school side changing, and that's not just the school side, that's across unions, I think, across the state. And so, for the first time in my time on the school committee, we didn't complete a contract negotiation in the year that it was, due. That was with the paraprofessionals. We have settled with them since then. We're currently negotiating with the teachers union right now, and the reality is the cost of labor in the state. We want to give fair wages to all of our employees. We need to keep in line with other districts. We've seen across the district in the last couple of years, when we used to have 30 people apply for a job, we have 2 or 3 people apply for jobs. We have some positions that, specialized positions that we can't fill within the school year. And so the challenge is just getting higher and higher. And so I think the thing that hasn't been said that I will say here, when you're looking at budget 1 versus budget 2, the idea of budget 1 would be to change the revenue source. And 2 would be you doing exactly what we've done in the past years. And I just think as an elected official, personally, I feel like, it's one thing to cut a couple of positions. The amount of cuts that we would need to do under budget 2 on the school side is higher than I would feel comfortable doing without going to the public and saying, is this what you want to do, or would you prefer to change the revenue structure? And so that's where I'm personally at. I just think that at the end of the day, we are all elected officials, and we speak for the constituents in this town. And it's just gotten to a point where I wouldn't feel comfortable under the way we've been doing it the last few years of making all those cuts personally without at least asking the town if they would prefer to do that or if they would prefer an alternative. So that's where I'm at personally. I think the school committee, we've had discussions about this. I think we're aligned, but I don't want to speak for my colleagues. But that's my uneloquent way of saying my thoughts at this early stage of the process. So thank you.
And Mr. Buckley, when you say change the revenue, you're talking about override.
Correct. Raising the debt levy. What we've spoken about at finance planning team was not doing it all in 1 year. We can't change. The problem has come up on us over many years now, and I don't think it would be fair to the taxpayers to try to do it all in 1 year. I don't think we necessarily have to do budget 1 or budget 2. I think there's a way that we can say we're at budget 2 right now. We need to stop using some of what we've been doing, but we need to do it over a period of time. And we've been talking about, well, if we spread it over 5 or 6 years and we did a raise to the debt levy, but we didn't tax all the way to the debt levy in the first year, or second, or third, or fourth. I think there's ways that we can, and that's what we've been trying to talk about and just understand, because my understanding, and Mr. O'Leary was here in 1953, so he might be able to tell us, but I don't think there's been a budget override since about 2003. That's what Mr. Venezia told me, somewhere in that time period. And the reality is expenses have gone up far more than 2.5% each year, and so at least over the last few years. So the goal would be to try to not make it a burden on people right away in 1 year, but to maybe try to gradually grow that into it, and then at the same time we can gradually take some of the things that we've been doing out of that as well. And but again, rather than just saying, well, here's what we're going to do, and because we had to settle a contract this year, we don't have the money for next year, and so we're going to cut X number of positions. And in the school side, I think the municipal side has needs as well. And it's not just looking at existing things. There's positions that need to be added on the municipal side that we hear about every year. On the school side, we've been able to add, adjustment counselors that we've needed after COVID. I wouldn't want to go back and, replace them. I wouldn't want to get rid of school nurses. And since I've been on the board, the people before me, Mr. Webster, Mr. Venezia, they really fought hard to lower class sizes, especially at the elementary. And the reality is, 83% of the school budget are salaries. So if we have to cut money, it's going to be positions. And what that means is higher class sizes, fewer electives, fewer, extracurriculars, higher user fees. And I just think some of those decisions ultimately are the decisions for the town to make. And I feel like my job would be to say, these are the options, and to argue for what I think is the right way to do it. And, the fine townspeople will say what they believe. So,
Thank you, Mr. Buckley, well said. Thank you.
I never say it well, but I try, so thank you guys.
Madam Chair, through you, just to follow on those comments, the projection of a $556,000 municipal department deficit, that's all municipal, all non-school departments combined together. That represents existing services and positions, things that we've focused over the years, collectively here and with the Finance Committee to try to add to the budget over the years. That number, we probably go into things beyond what's been added in recent years. So, it's obviously, a significant concern, to be here. We try, as a group, the standing message to the departments on your behalf is, look ahead at what the needs are. And I think every year we see that they've done that, and we see that in the budget hearings, and then we get the budget balanced, and we try to kind of address maybe one thing here or one thing there. But I think the message we want the community to hear is that existing services that we all benefit from as residents, are at significant risk. So, thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
In the presentation, there was a mention that some reoccurring revenue sources, I guess, are no longer going to be available to the school. Which ones are those?
Madam Chair, through you to Ms. Minipelli. So ESSER funding is the biggest one. Is that $600,000, Mr. Buckley?
No, it's I think we've spread it out. I think, there were different ESSER. There was 1, 2, and I think 3. I think the last year's budget had about $212,000 supporting 4 different positions. That didn't pay for the entirety of the positions, but it paid for a portion of them. So I think the dollar amount year over year was between $200,000 and $250,000.
For 4 positions?
For a portion of 4 positions, yes.
So that's no longer going to be available to fund those 4 positions?
That's correct.
That was the most significant?
For the school budget, yes. There are other factors that I think Mr. Buckley alluded to. We talked a lot about some of the expenses and salary implications. Mr. Buckley, I don't know if you want to speak to it.
Yeah, I mean, what was the full question? Is that the only thing, or?
No, we're talking a significant gap here, but hey, we're talking about $200,000. $200,000.
A lot of it's
$200,000 isn't much of that.
Right.
A lot of it is a salary, Mr. Earlier. A lot of it is a salary pool where, in years past, unions were agreeing to 1% and 2%, raises. And if you follow what's happened in many of the districts across the state, it's been far from what they've been negotiating. And the reality is, if you look at the North Reading teachers, we always try to stay within, not being the highest payers, but also if we fall behind the average, we don't get candidates. So it's something that we have to consider. And again, whether it's we cut some positions and have higher pay, or if we can add revenue so we don't have to do that either, that's the choice at the end of the day. But yeah, a lot of the I think 1.5 million of the deficit comes specifically from salary pool for salaries for next year as an increase.
Madam Chair, through you, I think we always do this update at this time of year. I think all of you know that, but you're hearing sort of the gravity and the concern, and I think that while I wasn't able to attend the last financial planning team meeting due to illness, I think we ought to consider what the next step is and how we want to take the conversation, as a board, as a financial planning team, as a school committee, as a finance committee, and what those next steps might be. Because I think as a financial planning team, we are concerned that what we give to you as a balanced budget, and I know we haven't started the hearings yet, may not be acceptable or palatable based on these limitations. So I think that's what we're asking folks to consider.
But what, I just wanted to follow up on that. So it sounds like, let's say, for example, those funds that are no longer going to be available, so those positions that were brought on board with those funds, they're no longer, you obviously can't afford those. So I can hear that, that's what you're saying, but it sounds to me like, and then some. So it's not just a matter of that funding is gone, so those positions are gone. You're having to renegotiate, I guess, your compensation. So if it's all right, Madam Chair, I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah, so there's a confluence of different issues that are happening at the same time. So yes, there are positions that a major portion of the funding was not in the revenue plan. And again, those positions, I don't have the full list in front. Actually, I do the full list over here, but you're at the list. I mean, those positions were a school adjustment counselor, or 2 school adjustment counselors, a digital learning technician, and a floater school nurse. These were things that were specifically needed during COVID, and when children were moving more to online, we needed some of those positions, and then when they were back to school, the nursing position. So those, even in the old funding, weren't there. The challenge is the largest union that we have, the NREA, the contract expires at the end of this year. So we need a new contract for next year, but the problem is to try to get that, what we're anticipating needing to pay to settle that contract would increase the wages. And so we just don't have the money in the current budget to do that. And so we have to make a decision as a town how we're going to handle it. And I have no intention, I shouldn't say this, but I'll say it on the record, I have no intention of trying to strike in North Reading. I don't think anybody here probably wants that happening. And so if the labor you had before costs more next year than it costs this year, and you don't have the money for it, then you have to cut positions. And so I think the point that Mr. Gilberto was just making was, before, the finance planning team has always said, oh, it's tough, but we do a few different things, and we put a balanced budget before you, and maybe there's a couple of cuts. I just think to do the same thing this year, the number of cuts would be far more than in the past, and it would be far less than providing level services to the town, I think, on both the municipal and the school side. And there are also needs, I think, that have been discussed even above that. And that's where I was just saying that, I think, I don't think in my 7 years I've come and cried wolf on anything before, but I think it's different this year. And, at the end of the day, we all have to decide together how we want to proceed with that. And the finance planning team are having very long meetings. I won't say the last one was the best one without Michael, but it was a very good meeting. But again, we are working well together, and I've been in those meetings for a number of years now, and they weren't always the same, tone. I think we all appreciate where we're at and respect each other, and are just trying to update both of our committees. We updated the school committee on where we're at, and I think the idea here is to update the select board as well as to sort of where we're at early in the process, but it's the reality of the situation this year.
So,
I was waiting for you to chime in.
yeah, I know. I agree with what Mr. Buckley said, that, just like we were talking on the municipal side with various contracts coming and, understanding how competitive is there. But I think we need to, whatever both respective boards decide is the best course of action, and if we need money, I think we owe it to the public for them to decide. And if we need the money, we need the money, and, you know, I don't think that the financial planning team, the CIPC, select board, or school committee should be the one making the decision that, well, ooh, this may affect certain people differently, so we shouldn't bring it to the community. I'm in the camp that we need more money. Things cost more. Prices are not going down. That's deflation. We do not have it. And we would not have it on wages anyways. We're not going to reverse what's happened the last 3-4 years. So I think we owe it to the town to be honest and put it out there. And if it requires more money, I think that, like everything, cost is only an issue in the absence of value. I know it's an old cliche, but it is the truth. If you show the value of why you're doing it, that we have to pay the teachers. I can tell you that if we have to cancel February vacation next year in North Reading, then that's going to be worse for every elected and appointed municipal official than any raise we would try to give them at a Prop 2.5. I can tell you that. So I think that both on the municipal and school side and the capital side as well, as Mr. Kelleher knows, there's plenty of things that are not even in consideration just because we don't have the money but need to be done. Oh, and that's before the culvert studies and, you know, everyone finally comes to the conclusion that, you know, the Hood School may not be around for the next 15 years. Sorry I said that out loud. But I think that we should put what we need to put for immediate needs. The budget, the reoccurring stuff. Because the stabilization funds run out, right? It's a savings account. I mean, it's not unlimited. And I think we put it to a vote and say, hey, no one, and I've said it over and over, I don't like taxes. Actually, I spend a lot of time with clients trying to help them defer. But these are needs we need, and I think we owe it to the town to put together whatever the number is, and for especially the things that we have a shortfall and the money we're going to need to pay various unions, not just school. There's other ones that are up. That we just put it to a vote. I mean, you could do it in June, right? That's the budget one, or I'd rather not do separate just because we just had one, but you put it to a vote and say, hey, community, we need this money to do X, or we lose X number of teachers, we don't hire, if we need more police and fire, I'm just kind of going through the whole gamut of what's been talked about. We can't fund things that I know on the municipal side, everybody can agree that our cybersecurity and tech could use a pretty expensive overhaul that we're not doing because we don't have the money. So I think we owe it to North Reading that you put it for a vote, and it's the 2/3, correct, not 3/4, 2/3 general overrides, or I'm sorry,
Majority vote.
simple majority.
Yeah.
But whatever it is, you go to town meeting, you explain the benefits, the pros and cons. I mean, really the only cons are that taxes go up, which no one wants, including myself. And you put it up for a vote, because I think the going in a circle like we did 2 years ago and last year and doing it now, trying to find creative ways, I think people will be surprised of how much support there is for some of the good ideas that we need, and then some of the things that we have to have. So that's my opinion on it. Looking at it from a financial planning standpoint, that you put what we need and you put it to a vote. I don't think any committee, elected or appointed, should decide whether or not something's too expensive for the town. I don't. And you know what? Unfortunately, if it does go through, there's going to be those that it hurts more than others. That's unfortunate, but running a town is like running a business. You're not growing, you're dying. It's plain and simple. So one way or the other, eventually it will hurt everybody if we lose services across the board, from elder services to the school. So you put it up for a vote, and if it goes through, and if it's going to hurt some more than others, I understand, that's why it's difficult to say this, but what's the alternative? Because I don't want to think about it. I don't want less police or teachers in town. So that's my 10 cents, because I think I talked for like 5-6 minutes.
Thank you for your time. Mrs. Bailey Kelly?
Just, because I think it might, I don't want to keep peppering you with questions, because I know that Mr. Gilberto said this is just kind of the first phase of this, but it seems to me, you said 87% of the budget is going to, 83% is salary. And obviously some of that, that 600,000 was temporary, known that it was temporary, so, right? But if it sounds like contemplating asking for an override of a certain percentage to cover salaries, or, no override, and then the alternative is the trimming of staff, obviously. So that would be the function of school committee to show us what that looks like too, right? Because I think the logical consequence of Andover or the strikes that are occurring, that's the give and the take of it, right? They know that that's going to lead to trimming of staff, versus I'm concerned about us thinking our pathway is an override, and then 3 years from now when the next contract comes up, our next pathway is an override. I'd be worried about going down that pathway too, of just thinking we need an override every few years to cover it. Do you know what I mean? I don't even want to do a back and forth with you because it's so early to discuss it.
No, the only thing I was just going to say is, like, so overall in the 2.5 million, I mean, it's the 2.5 million means basically very, very little increase overall in revenue for next year. But there's other things in there as well. There's out of district, we've had some move-ins for special education, and that's between $300,000 and $350,000 more than the budget from last year. There's just other expenses. The bus rate goes up quite a bit. The bus rate goes up $70,000 for next year. There's more contracted transportation services, more than $100,000 for special education students and out of district placement. So it's not only salaries. Yeah, I mean, again, we're just saying what it's going to cost here, and I'm not even necessarily proposing right now this is what it is not. I just think before, my goal for a town meeting would be to say, essentially, if the finance planning, but the first hope is that this committee would hear from the finance planning team and say, okay, here are the two options. If we do what we've been doing the last couple of years, this is what it looks like, and these are the cuts that we're going to have. And propose an alternative and say, okay, if we can raise the debt levy, and we do it over a few years, this will be the impact. It doesn't mean there still aren't going to be cuts. There probably will still be cuts in addition to that, but to try to put it out and just say, here are the two options that we would like to put before the town. And I mean, again, I don't think that just because there was inflation, historic inflation over the last couple of years, that's going to continue every other year. But I don't know where things are going, but I just think we're just trying to brainstorm, because in the past, I think the select board and the school committee have asked the finance planning team to basically come back with our recommendation. I think what we're asking for right now is we want to sort of pursue two different avenues and say, here's an avenue the way we've always been doing it, and here's another alternative path that we would like to consider putting up for vote. And that's where I'm at with this right now, and that would absolutely still involve saying, if we do nothing different, we don't ask for an override, we don't ask for anything different, these are the positions that will be cut. And I don't think we're going to identify and say it's Mr. Studo in the 3rd grade, but I think it will be like it's 7 elementary school teachers, and the average class size will go from 19 and a half to 23. And it's a department or whatever. I don't know what it is, but that's the idea. And we'll do what we're tasked to do in the finance planning team. We'll come back with the budget, but I just think the consensus in that room is the the amount of cuts that we would need will be so high that it's better to ask the public before we just do that. So that's where I'm standing, and again, it's been 20 years since we had a budget override, and expenses have gone up far more than 2.5% a year, especially in the last few, so. Thank you.
I appreciate all the honesty and the transparency, and I think it's important, and I agree. It should be up to the town to decide what they want to do, Anybody else?
We're kind of,
Yeah.
sorry.
Can you hold that for public comment? Thank you.
So we're focused on the schools because it's 67% of our budget, but it would have to affect our municipal as well.
Oh, sure.
So the pain should be, if this scenario is we're going up 2.5% and that's it, the pain should be broad across all departments, not just schools. School would obviously get hit more in actual dollars because you're twice as large as a municipal. Yeah, I think that's important. And I think also, I think to your point, it's more than just once a year thing. It has to be thought of like going forward. So I was going to ask, like, are we thinking, because I think school enrollment has gone down. Maybe that's true. I don't know the numbers anymore. Are there facility changes we can make that would help, give us a systematic boost? I mean, I'm just, I have no idea. But, there could be more than just staffing issues that are on the table. And that should be considered, because this sounds to me like a very long-term problem that we're going to have for a very long term. And so we have to think more than just this year. We have to be thinking years down the line. Because we don't have, even if we got sewer in, it would be years before that produced income. So we're talking 5-10 years of hurt. And we have to be thinking about that from a pretty big point of view. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Mankler?
I just think that if the ask is to present it to town meeting, I do think we do need to hear the alternative plan. This number of teachers, this department, we need that. These are the reimbursables that we receive from the state for our budget are completely different than the municipal budget. We don't get the same reimbursables to help fund our budget that the school department does. So I want to hear,
Sure.
What chunks of that we're no longer getting or we're reduced to help assist with special education, transportation, lunch program. There's all grants that come through for those things. What of those have dried up that are no longer available to assist with the budget that we then now have to go? What is the percentage increase that's being asked that we would now have to ask for an override to cover it? I would want more information about that.
I don't think that 66% though should change. At 66% school.
No, but we've never locked that in. We've never hard and fast
We've
locked
stayed
that
really
in.
close to that number.
We have,
Yeah.
but I would want to see for purposes of this exercise of going, and it sounds like being driven by collective bargaining in the most aspect other than that chunk that's not coming through for those core positions. That's what I would want to know a little bit more detail about that
Sure.
too. But I think we owe it, if the request is to go to the town meeting, we owe it to give the full
Yeah, of course.
I
understanding.
agree.
Both
Just like you
sides.
would want to know, they would want to know.
Yeah,
They
for
would
sure.
want to hear it.
I do want to know.
Absolutely. Mr. Callahan?
I was calling it just the next version. And you all know, there is, in all municipal governments, there is a structural imbalance between Proposition 2.5 and the cost of living. And I think, obviously, that's what we've experienced for years, and it's catching up with us. probably just caught up with us to the extent that we had to rely on free cash and moving things around to make it work. But it's more than just a couple of positions in the school. It's all of the employees in the town. It's all of the supplies that we buy. It's all of the services that we buy that cost more than 2.5% or 102.5% of what it cost last year. So to the extent that they do, and we maintain that level of service and level of supplies, then we've got a mismatch between our revenue and our expenses. I don't think that's news to anybody here. You people have lived with this longer than I have, maybe, but it is the issues we've talked about for years and years. And I think the idea of letting the voters decide is a good one. A plan A and a plan B. And plan B could be some form of override that extends into a number of years by raising the levy, but not using it all, not taxing up the levy in each of the years until we're out there. And the other would be do what we've been doing and just making it work. And that's been a battle every year, just hammering those things that pop out of the sides and banging them back in and making it work. We can do that, but there will be services and staffing that will probably have to go away, if not this year, certainly at some point in time. Or there could be staffing that we would like to have that just can't come on if you can't afford it. So I think that the idea of being open and transparent with the voting public is the right approach. It's not a North Reading problem. It's a problem with the Commonwealth. And it's been growing since Proposition 2.5. And it just was, as I say, a structural imbalance. And recognizing it and then trying to figure out smart ways of dealing with it that will last into the future is what we need to do. My two cents.
Thank you, Mr. O'Leary. Anyone else? Mr. O'Leary?
Obviously, the day of reckoning is upon us. You know, it's been coming, it's foreseen, we knew it's coming, but what we're seeing tonight is just some preliminary numbers here that are going to have a significant impact on not just the school department, but general government too. Again, we just discussed this evening the costs of whether it be salaries and negotiations with our employees and whether it be the cost of health insurance. I mean, we budget health insurance costs at 7.5% a year. Just the health insurance costs for our employees. And we've been able to cover that, you know, with the new growth money, you know, with some free cash, with some infusion of cash from other resources which are finite and you know, not necessarily recurring. So we've said it over the last several years, you know, with the Pulte project, which took place there, that's assisted us over the last 5 years in closing the budget gap and covering some of these costs in excess of the in the new growth category above and beyond Proposition 2.5. So it's no surprise, and I think we've been very open with the public every year, you know, that things are getting tighter. And in relation to the level of services that we currently enjoy and that people expect, you know, for their tax dollars, whether it be in the school departments and the student-teacher ratios and the ancillary programming that takes place there, to our own, you know, senior center, police and fire, DPW, health department, all the services that we currently enjoy, we take for granted. We shouldn't take for granted. We can't take for granted because it costs money to operate. And, you know, the voters decided years ago, back in the 70s, in Proposition 2.5 or whatever it was, 70s or 80s, early 80s, to cap what revenues we can raise through property taxation. So we have to talk about, again, and as we have been with the proposed project that we're talking about, you know, how are we going to raise additional revenue beyond single-family homes? Our commercial tax base here is less than 10%. You know, so it's going to fall on all of us. And what people need to familiarize themselves with is that all of us sitting up here are homeowners and taxpayers, just like everybody that puts us here. And it affects us all. So, what happens to your school system directly impacts the value of your home. It doesn't decrease the cost of doing business at all. And so if you're going to be, cutting services, increasing student-teacher ratios and things like that, it has a direct impact where, you can save today, in your tax dollars, but you're going to lose it in the long run. But, we have an obligation to let people know and keep them informed. And we're going to have to refamiliarize them with some of the jargon, like, well, what's a debt limit? What's it mean? And then if we're going to give them a choice, you say you're going to look for X number of dollars in an override, how does that work? As everybody's alluded to tonight, you don't do it one lump sum. You override for a dollar amount, but you don't spend that money in the first year. You spend it over several years and incrementally raise it over and above. But that's all to be discussed later on. But we're at the point where it's facing us.
Yeah.
General government side, school department side, and the good thing that's happened here, I'm glad I was around here way back when we started this financial planning team concept, because I also remember the town meetings when school committee sat over there, select board sat here, we did our budget, they did their budget, we went to town meeting, not united, not together, and fought it out on town meeting floor. With the finance committee playing referee sometimes, or being ignored. So with the finance planning team, what's happened here is it's allowed us through the course of the year, and again, what people have to understand, the finance planning team meets 12 months out of the year. It's not 3 months or a budgetary cycle. So there's a level of communication with both sides. General government understands what's happening in the school department understands what's happening in general government, what's the cost to operate. And we come to a conclusion, we come to a consensus as to what we need to offer. And I think the consensus is, as we can see tonight, is, we don't have enough to sustain what we want to sustain, what we need to sustain. So how are we going to approach it? Are we just going to, slash and burn? Or are we going to, we're talking about a level services budget here, and you've got a $3+ million structural deficit for level services. So is it fair for us to say, okay, town meeting, here's your budget, here's your balanced budget. By the way, we've cut $3 million out of it.
Right.
And with that, these level of services. But we say, this is substantial enough where this is what we need to present you with for a balanced budget and the level of services we can offer you. And here's the alternative.
Right.
And here's the alternative, not just for next year, but looking forward. We don't want to be doing this every year. We can't afford to do this every year. I appreciate the finance planning team bringing it to our attention. And again, it's this board, and only this board, the select board, that can determine whether or not an override gets put on the ballot for consideration. School committee can recommend, finance committee can recommend, but only the select board can put it forth to the voters to consider. And it's something that we need to consider. Not that we've made any decisions or come to any conclusions here tonight, but I think this is the first step in informing the public that we have a structural problem here that needs to be addressed, and you're going to play a major role in determining how we move forward. We're not going to make the total decisions here. We're going to provide you with some alternatives, and if you're looking for a charge, if the finance planning team is looking for a charge, then I think this board should charge the finance planning team with looking at an alternative budget, forecasting out several years as to how we can proceed moving forward. So that's where I stand right now. Again, I had no idea what the cuts are going to be there or even here yet, but some are coming. And in the meantime, we have to pay a fair wage to our employees. We have to provide them with the benefits. We have an obligation to do so, and we have to pay our bills. So, as I said, the day is upon us, and it's never fun to address it. We've had to do it in the past. We get through it. The general public town meeting decides how much they want to spend and what level of services they want to have enjoy. But in the meantime, we also have to look at what are our chances and what are our options But what options can we provide ourselves moving forward for revenue outside of real estate taxes? We don't have many choices or options. In the not-too-distant future, I would expect that the voters are going to be asked to make that decision too. Do you want to provide yourself with some options and with some opportunities to grow, effectively enhancing your revenue stream or not? So there's a lot of decisions to be made, not just at the local board levels here, but for the general public as a whole. But it's going to take an education process to make them understand the jargon and the lingo and really what the effects of what the votes are going to be. So we have a lot of work to do, a lot of hard work educating the public, and along with my colleagues here, I look forward to, hopefully we can do that. So I'm for the charge. Go charge forward.
I just want to also add, and we haven't talked about it yet, financial planning. However, that new shiny toy we bought that we want to build something on, it's probably going to require employees, especially if it's something more. I'm assuming that if we do, whether it's a intergenerational recreation, if you expand out Ipswich River Park and the services, I think we're going to have to hire a few people. So again, it's also taken into account that although whatever goes there would probably be a debt exclusion, to take on debt, the annual operating of it will not be. That will be an annual operating thing. So just another thing that as we expand things to the community, the wants, not so much the needs, even though it's a fine line between needs and wants, we're gonna have to hire more people to run those wants. So there's something that I think that I agree with Mr. O'Leary that it really needs to be explained, because I feel that, there's been a lot of chatter about all this money we want to spend on putting something at Ipswich River Park, but when people see the tax bill for some of these ideas, or the potential tax bill, I think it's going to be like, oh, so just another thing to keep in mind. So, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Good discussion. Thank you for coming and answering questions for us, Mr. Buckley and Mr. Kelleher. Thank you for your input. And Lorianne, always.
Scott, thank you for setting the tone.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
I just have enough meetings tonight, so.
We just don't have a lot of time, actually, between now and June, so the faster the scenarios can come in, so we can contemplate them better.
All right. Are we ready to move on to wastewater project update?
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. This is, as described on the agenda, intended to be an update more than anything for the community, not sitting here with any particular decision points. But I have 5 sort of comments that I'll offer as a means for an update. I'll note that I'm joined by Joe Parisi, the DPW director, who's here in the audience. First, the discussion with regard to the route, particularly the out-of-town wastewater route to connect to the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District.
Excuse me, Mr. Administrator.
Oh,
Mr. Vice Chair.
yeah, I forgot.
I will be recusing myself from any participation in any discussion or deliberation in relation to the wastewater project update or whatever you're going to present. I will be participating. I will be recusing myself. I'll be sitting over there and reserve the right to comment as a private citizen rather than as a member of the board.
And Mr. Wallner is going to do the same.
Exact same thing. Steve always says it better.
Anytime, I look forward to hearing.
And
Do you need a quorum to keep doing it?
she's in the bathroom. Technically, she's in the building.
So no, we can't. We have to wait
I
until
think we
she
should wait.
returns.
Yeah.
Mr. Vice Chair.
Call a recess.
What? You can't just sit there? If I call Reese, somebody use the hammer.
Temporary recess. Call.
Temporary recess.
We're in recess.
Are you so happy? Did I make your night?
Yeah, so you'll have to take us out of recess.
Back in order.
Oh, well, we have a quorum, so we can go.
You're not calling me. Now we do with you.
All right, whole meeting back to order.
Back to work, okay, 10:20.
Thank you.
Through you.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, you left us here.
I can only wait so long.
Through you, Madam Chair, again, this is intended as more an update to the work that's ongoing in advance of some presentations to the community, to the select board at a future public meeting. A handful of comments that I'll offer, 5 to be exact. First, route discussion for the out-of-town route to connect to Greater Lawrence Sanitary District. Conversations with the towns of North Andover and Andover continue with the discussion amongst myself and my two counterparts occurring this afternoon with regard to the out-of-town route, and focus being on that right answer for the region, particularly the Greater Lawrence Sanitary District as a whole. As the community knows, we are zoned in on Route 125 to Route 114 route. But there are some concerns that we've heard from the town of North Andover, and we've been simultaneously considering the out-of-town route through the town of Andover as well in our planning efforts. So those conversations have intensified in recent weeks, and I think that we hope to be able to bring forth a conclusion on the out-of-town portion of the route very soon. Related to that, there's what prompted sort of the urgency in this discussion, this most recent iteration of the discussion of the sewer project, the Mass DOT project on Route 114 in North Andover. That project does still continue. One thing that we are looking more closely at after having some discussions with Mass DOT is whether it makes sense to continue to follow their timeline for construction, but potentially not be wedded to their procurement process and have our own contract in place that would give us a little bit more independence and control, and candidly something that we're being encouraged to consider by Mass DOT. So those conversations are continuing to happen. Third, and I know something that folks are really eager to hear more about, the work on the cost-benefit analysis, as well as the annual sewer operating cost projections. That continues and is in fact concluding. We have our consultants, FXM and Kleinfelder, have been participating in meetings with the finance director, the DPW director, myself, the planner, the assessor, and we are looking towards having information to bring back to the community to consider soon. I think I'm hopeful that we'll be able to provide some measure of an update at the next select board meeting, regular select board meeting, which is Monday, March 4th. Sort of simultaneous issues that I just want folks to be aware of in case they start to see and hear about it. We have 2 communications that we are expecting to send out by mail to 2 different groups. So the first relates to pump station locations, and there are a series of I think all commercial properties that we've identified as ideal spots that we'll be reaching out to the property owners by letter to begin conversation about their interest, the benefits of their property of the project, but their interest in us locating the necessary pump stations on or near their property. Again, simultaneously, we've talked a lot about the state MassWorks program and the important role that we hope it plays in funding the project. With the planner and through some conversations with the DPW director, we will be, again, reaching out to commercial property owners along the route to gauge their interest in partnering with the town to submit a grant application. As I've said many times publicly, in order to qualify for the state MassWorks program, you generally need to have a private development partner who's looking to do something on their property. And so the best way we can see is to reach out directly to the property owners. We did hear from some of them 18 months ago when we had some of the workshops, and there may be others that are out there. So I want folks to know that those communications will be going out to those 2 targeted groups, and that the work continues with sort of a big, I think, circle around that Monday, March 4th meeting date. We recognize that it puts pressure on the timeline for a late March or early April special town meeting. I think that's something we're going to have to look at and bring to the board to consider for a schedule. Not something that we necessarily can determine this evening, but we recognize that there's going to likely be a need for some there's going to be a need for adequate time to digest the information that's coming in. But I do want the public to know that we made commitments in September and October to bring additional information back, and there is a substantial amount of work that's going to bring that information back, where it can all be reviewed and discussed publicly in meetings and information sessions, and for the town to proceed in the way that it wishes to with regard to this important project. So I'm going to stop there. That's sort of an update. I want to prepare folks for what we think will be the next step coming back publicly in a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Studo?
So I have a question for Mr. Gilberto, and then I have some comments of my own. Mr. Gilberto, wasn't there, not an issue, but since the SRF funding has become more important because of a substantially lower interest rate than market, was there any kind of conflict between the Mass DOT involvement and the SRF funding that also has just come to light?
So there is some concern on the part of Mass DOT that the SRF funding program has some restrictions that could complicate their project. I think the dialogue has been open, the communication has been open, but there are some issues that come with being part of that project. I have to stress, I guess it's 3 years ago now when we started this conversation in earnest. Is it more than that? Less than that?
August 2021.
Okay, so almost 2.5 years ago. One thing I will just stress is the interest rates were very different, and our dependence on the SRF program was a very different role at that point in time. But now it clearly, I think we all feel it's critical for the project to be able to proceed because of what the interest rates are.
So I only wanted that to be clarified, and also a couple of other thoughts of why I feel it was important for Mr. Gilberto to start re-exploring other routes that were first brought up but then set aside because of the Mass DOT. Another thing that happened, which I think flipped some of our plans on a dime because we need a partner community to help us out, is that after town meeting in North Andover did away with their potential project off 114 by Merrimack, the thinking in that community shifted pretty dramatically on, North Reading taking a chisel and hammer, throughout that route. So again, I'm not saying it's the only reason, but I think that, it just seemed some of the reporting we were getting back from Mr. Parisi and Mr. Gilberto and you can tell when the tone shifted, right? And at first it seemed like nothing, but then, at the same time, when Mass DOT's tone started shifting a little, again, maybe because, as Mrs. Herbert would have said if she's here, 3 years, everything can change from pricing to everything. She always brings up how time is of the essence, and there's just factors out of our control that shifted enough where conversations about should we look at another route, and that's exactly what is just being looked at from my understanding. And I'm not part of those conversations because that's done at the DPW, town administrator, manager level. So I just wanted to point that out. The SRF funding, I think, was the biggest thing that stuck out to me, that if Mass DOT straight out said that, well, if you want to piggyback on us, you can't use that funding, then that's a problem. That's a big problem, because you're talking about hundreds of thousands and more of interest over 20 years. So that's not even, I don't even know how we could even entertain that. The flip side, though, is that there were two major issues when this project was announced. The first one was the betterment. I'm not talking about it. It's been dead now for like a year, and it's still dead, okay? Even though somebody tonight will post on Facebook that it's still there. But the second complaint was always the speed. And again, we were at the mercy of Mass DOT. They were setting the deadline. If it so happens after discussion and consulting and conversation and this entire board and 2 citizens in the stands who want to give an opinion as private citizens, I think that what the town would get is we'd be able to check the box on the second thing, that it would give us substantially more time to at least not redo the whole thing, but to do some of the things that we just could not do. Meaning the more community involvement, how the wastewater committee was first structured back in, when did that first happen? 2020?
Yes.
Right? Like, which was a much different chart. When you guys had that conversation, wasn't it?
2015, wasn't it, when they did the agreement?
No, when you guys voted when Andy was still on the board. That was 2020, I think.
To modify the
Yeah,
chart.
to modify the chart. So again, it's just saying that we feel that it's important to look at that, because those are things that when I asked Mike, why are we looking at it, and you start getting told these, you're like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, because things have just changed. And it just, again, my fear is that you need the partner community, but at the same time, Mass DOT just doesn't sound as enthusiastic as, they were really enthusiastic 3 years ago, and now they're just not. So that's just my opinion on that. Also though, I do want to say, because it's come up, and I'm happy that, CIPC and financial planning is represented by the other side. There should not be any other projects that need to get done, from the firehouse to the intergenerate to anything, that should not be sent for a vote if appropriate, talked about allocating funds or any other planning because of what's going to happen with sewer. Because this huge project here, we can't force a vote and a decision to then move on like as a check the box item. It's too big. It's the biggest one in the history of North Reading, meaning that if the route for some reason gets modified and we don't have to have this vote in April because the circumstances have changed, we're not going to force one through so then we can now finally move on to other items. I think you're doing the community a disservice if we do that. So I just wanted to mention that I'm going to, it's a question that came up at CIPC, at Capital. It's a question that came up at financial planning, so I felt it was important that we did the best we could to answer that question under the circumstances. So that's where we're at. But I think that, at this point, looking at a plan B like Mr. Gilberto is, if there needs to be, I think it's just, the opinions of the players have changed, so we can't ignore them. Thank you.
I think it's also worth mentioning that when this all started, there were explosions in Andover. So it kind of kept us from even thinking about going there, because they had already gone through enough and were going through repairs. That's changed now.
I'm confused now. I'm confused by the whole, so I just have a couple of questions on this. So Mr. Gilberto said there was an issue with out-of-town route. So is it through North Andover out-of-town route, or is it through Andover town route? Which issue is it?
Madam Chair.
Not doing the North Andover because DOT doesn't want us to or won't allow us to piggyback?
Madam Chair, through you, so we are continuing to look at a primary route that follows Route 125 to Route 114 through North Andover, as we've been stating since the first vote, I think in 2021. There are two scenarios for that route. One is that we are part of a state transportation department construction project, or we are doing our own project parallel to that. at the same time or very close there too. So those two options are still what we are looking at. A secondary option is an alternative route through the town of Andover that does not go to Route 114 and instead kind of goes on the back side of the Merrimack College campus, which we've also talked about that we're looking at as an alternative. So those three continue to be what we are looking at to resolve, and our hope is to be able to resolve them come that March meeting. But what I do want to highlight is that there are other issues that have come up with that DOT, us being part of the DOT contract group. That's what I'm trying to share.
That's through North Andover?
Through North Andover, correct.
Okay. And then you said, because those were the options already.
Yes.
Those were the alternatives that we've been talking about for
Correct.
a while. And Andover is supposed to be under the tenets of their water agreement with us, helping facilitate our connection to.
Yes, which they have been doing.
Yes, so if that means going through Andover, that's a viable option for us to do that, right?
It's something that we've been looking at, and it could be, yes.
Okay, so officially, that out-of-town route hasn't been decided, in other
Correct.
words. Then my second question is, just in terms of the SRF funding and where there's some issue, I just need you to kind of explain what that issue, what are they even talking about? So MassWorks in conflict with SRF, I don't understand that because there's many projects like this.
No, not MassWorks, that's different.
What are you talking about we can't use one or the other, or what is that, what do you mean by that?
The requirements that we have to follow to expend SRF, so sewer revolving fund
Yes.
money, are stricter than what the State Department of Transportation would normally use in their bid. That's what
okay.
we've been told by, did I say that right, Joe? That's what we've been told by Mass DOT. So,
I
not
see.
necessarily prohibitive, but our challenges. And again, when this all started 2.5 or 3 years ago, SRF was not a primary funding source. It wasn't until the interest rate issue really reared its head that it became a primary funding and then a necessity, to be candid with you. But again, to be very clear, I don't want folks, the route, meaning the roads that we follow, could be the exact same roads, just the mechanism in which we actually get into a construction contract might be different.
So when you're saying that we might be doing that parallel to them,
Correct.
we'd still gain the opportunity while they're digging in the road, if this is approved, to do our project while they're there, but we have other more stringent requirements. So they want to do their work outside of that, but let us do our work the way we have to do our work, in other words.
That was very well said.
So, no, that makes sense the way makes sense the way you're
So
explaining.
it's almost like, Ms. Manipelli, it's almost, they don't want a couple of additional headaches, I mean, for lack of a better word, that
Yeah.
come from, because they're able to skirt it, right? Because they're the state, DOT. So here they would have to follow, more just, I don't even know what the particulars, but it seems like it must be enough for them to want to mention it, so.
And then my last question, Madam Chair, through you to Mr. Gilberto, were you meaning a special meeting in March or April next month or the month after that?
So that's what we were discussing for a plan when we talked about what information we were going to seek out for the community to better inform the decision, going back to September and October. That timeline is clearly becoming very tight. But with it is the possibility that we have additional time for decision-making if we are not contracting as part of a state construction project. It doesn't mean we lose the ability to construct at that time, but we might be under our own contract separately.
So my last two questions then. If we are doing our own, that's going to increase the cost for the project for us?
It could, depending upon the scenario. I mean, there is some value for the fact that there will be construction happening in the area, regardless of who's under contract for it.
So I don't want to make a presumption one way or the other.
Could we hire, or is it, I don't know if this is even being considered, but the contractor that they're using, could we use that same contractor for our work?
Depending on the timing of the bidding, it could be in the interest of that contractor to bid on this work, which may result in a much lower bid than somebody else might have because they will be mobilized in the area. That's another opportunity for us to potentially take advantage of the Department of Transportation project without, again, when we're talking the details of municipal administrative contracting at this point, that's what we're talking about. You know, in the end, it's the pipe in the ground in the same spot at close to the same time. So I don't want, to alarm people, in terms of that. This is something we've been, I think, talked about and looking at for a number of months and continue to work through.
My last question is, when is DOT, when are they planning to do their work? Those projects usually are locked in years in advance.
They are planning to bid in early 2025 for construction beginning of the 2026 construction season. Is that right, Joe?
Most likely.
Okay. Maybe late 2025 construction season,
Okay.
early 26.
So that gives us a little bit of breathing room to,
And again, I'm not here representing that any decisions or even recommendations are in place. I'm more providing the update in the interest of transparency with everybody.
And again, I want to stress that
thank you.
Thank you.
the thought of not, for any kind of cost savings, piggybacking with Mass DOT, it never crossed my mind not to until about the SRF funding, because I can tell you what, I mean, I guess we could always compare the numbers, but I still can't imagine getting an interest rate closer to 4.5 versus 2, that is going to be less of a savings than whatever additional cost, ancillary costs may be if we don't piggyback with Mass DOT, just because of the size of the note. I mean, it's pretty big over 20 or 30 years, depending on if it goes through, what people decide. So, and also, you brought up another point that kind of reinforced what I said about the second biggest complaint that we've heard through the committees, through almost every single public discussion we've had, was we're moving too fast, we're moving too fast. So, and again, I'm not saying it's unlimited time, but it would buy us a little bit more where, if there is certain things that it would have been done, let's say, this way, maybe we can reintroduce some of those. And I'm not saying we're there, but it's just something that would be another kind of added bonus to if we decide that it is better of an option to not go with Mass DOT, even though we still kind of run their timeline. And then again, the scenario where we don't do that route, well, we really haven't given enough weight on that at all at this point, so I can't really speak on that.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, through you, a related action to the next agenda item. We have a wastewater project committee that the board put together last year. It's more, I think it's technicality at this point than anything else, but its term was slated to end December 31st of 2023 when we were thinking about having a fall 2023 town meeting. So I think Mrs. Studo and I are recommending that we extend the term for that charge through this calendar year, along with the appointments as well for that committee.
Okay, I move to extend the
I
term.
believe there's two motions that we're here.
Oh, does someone else have to read them?
Board members.
Nice to be back. Thank you.
Can you guys vote on that?
Can they vote on this?
The wastewater committee?
It might be good.
You didn't vote on it the
I
first
believe we
time.
can, but I'm going to abstain anyway.
Right.
Yeah, we don't have to. I can read it though.
Read it.
Sure. Read and abstain.
I can read it.
There you go. Madam Chair, I move to amend the charge of the wastewater project committee to end December 31, 2024, and extend the terms of appointment of the following members to expire December 31, 2024. Timothy Sutherland, Stephen Coriel, Victor Huey, Vincenzo Studo, Stephen Mazanza, and Jeffrey Griffin.
Second.
I'm going to have a a motion and a second.
Do you want to be someone, Stephen Corralio? You know what we do, Vincenzo. Oh, okay. Studo, Stephen Casaza, Jeffrey Griffin.
Actually, yes, I'm waiting.
Mr. O'Leary, you're abstaining.
Abstain.
Mr. Wallner
Absent.
is abstaining. Mrs. Minnie Pelli.
Mr. Sutherland, Mr. Coriali, Mr. Hui, Mr. Studo, Mr. Casaza, and Mr. Griffin.
And here is Mr. Sutherland, Mr. Corielli, Mr. Hui, Mr. Studo, Mr. Casaza, and Mr. Griffin.
It's cold.
Discussion, use of virtual meeting technology by way of Zoom. So for the board, I asked Mr. Gilberto to put this on the agenda in light of what happened last meeting. I had brought this up before. We had this discussion and everybody felt that they wanted to continue with Zoom and, you know, that it was a good way for people to be involved in our meetings and that everybody felt it was important. But after what happened last meeting, it was really, disturbing. So I rethought it. The only town surrounding us that's still using Zoom is Reading. Andover's not, North Andover's not, Linfield's not, Middleton's not, Wilmington's not. And keep in mind that if we choose to not, and this is a production to have to do this. And when things happen like that, we now have to resource the police department. Detective Lucci has to research this. It just seems like it's unnecessary. We have NORCAM. People can watch from NORCAM. We can bring it in when we want to. If we're having a public hearing, we can choose to bring it in. If a member can't be here, we can choose to bring it in. It doesn't have to be gone permanently. But we don't have to have it every meeting. So I just wanted to bring it back up and have a discussion about it and see if we've changed our minds. Mr. Stewart.
I have a question and an opinion. First, the question, Mr. Gilbert, maybe you can answer. However, and we talked about this when it first happened, but isn't it that any policy we set on Zoom has to be followed by every board in town? Right, meaning, wasn't there something with the select board can, whatever the select board sets for that, like meaning, and this would include, my understanding was CPC, school committee, everybody across the board. It was like, remember when we got all that, it was all that press? Can you clarify that?
So, Madam Chair, yes. Until state law extended the ability to have the remote participation to 2025 is the meeting place, is that right? You would have been required to adopt remote meeting procedures under the old state law, which is now, I guess I'll say, been superseded by our ability to have these virtual meetings by through March of, I think, of 2025.
Okay.
So I don't, you have an option, you know, the ability to have a virtual meeting instead of assembling in person is available to you under those provisions. We choose to do both. We have been doing both the in-person assembly and making it available. Largely, it's been taken advantage of by the public, although there have been some instances where members have been able to take advantage of it. And from everything that I've been able to read, we, you know, until 2025 at least, we have that flexibility. So it becomes, you know, what do we want to do? I would not recommend, you know, prohibiting any board or committee in town from utilizing it. There are some boards that are using it right now. It's working really well. There are others that are using it right now, but may have to change because of topics that are coming up on their agendas. We well recognize that. And I think, you know, it's worked, but I know the chair wanted to have a discussion about, you know, for this board, what makes sense.
So my opinion on it is, I think it should be available for view only, just because It's just sometimes easier versus like NORCAM. There's a lot of people who cut the cord and only like, I don't know, I know you can get it online, but I feel like, maybe a listen only, right? Like tonight, but permanently, like that's how it would be. But I look and, yeah, I think for certain times, I mean, we've done enough of these, and let's see. Especially if you take wastewater product update off the agenda, we would have had 3 people here tonight on Zoom. Like, I mean, unless there's something that's very, public interest, I don't think that removing Zoom and removing the liability of some hack coming in and disrespecting, the entire town and board, like, I just don't think that, I haven't seen enough evidence since COVID ended, especially that without Zoom, the public interest would not be served. And I feel that there are other things out there, but they're more complex. Like WebEx, Microsoft Teams, they're better, more secure, but we'd have to send Mr. Gilberto off the training camp for 3 months just to figure it out because they're much more complex, but they are higher security. Like, we use it, and let me tell you something, you're gonna need to be real good to break in or to show that, because like everything requires approval. But I feel like that's too much of a burden on the town administrator or anyone else. So yeah, I think we should have it for specific reasons, but maybe I wouldn't be opposed to limiting it on a meeting-to-meeting basis every time.
That's what I'm feeling, and that's what we can do is, and just so this view only, this is working because locks were put up to make this work, but it's only a matter of time before the hackers figure that out. It's not something that they'll figure it out. So
Possibly, yeah.
it's just a constant, they're always one step ahead, Mrs. Manu Pelli, I feel like you want to say something.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts about it. I did actually speak quite at length the last time we discussed it, which is one of the reasons why I didn't want to approve the minutes, because I didn't record my comments as they were stated. And I think that this type of technology is an important resource we should be able to master. We shouldn't be putting it on the TA to have to master this. We have tech services. We have people that should be here at the meetings helping out, instead of having to have the TA be worrying about transmission, can you be heard, etc. I work full-time, and I have tried to attend things on Zoom, meetings that I'm the liaison on. I just did it last week and was not only not invited to be a participant during the meeting, which is something that I have a vote on, but I'm in another community pretty far away from here. I almost did tonight because I took the wrong way home today and ended up coming home through Boston, which is never a good idea. I just wasn't paying attention as much as I should. But it's a good resource we should master and have available for people to be able to connect, because we instituted these meetings before the meetings, in these public meetings of the warrant articles, and we saw a lot of participation, even if it's just someone as it's being presented that then ends up having a question. There's ways that it can be run, like Teams or WebEx, where we require someone to stand up, give their name and their address. Are we doing that when they're here? No, half the time we don't even know who's on. We can see certain of the same people that are joining us, but we don't know the people on the phone. There's a way to do it where if you're going to provide comment, do your name, where you live, your name and your address, your full name and your full address, and then you'll be allowed to participate in public comment before we let that person participate. Sometimes that even still has a negative consequence. Those same people that I heard in the meeting that sounded like a robocall, they had real people do that to the Framingham City Council last week and say all kinds of really offensive commentary. it was the same type of stuff that was said there, some anti-Semitic and racist and really just repulsive comments, you know. But I do think there's a way to figure it out so that we have this accessible, not just for us, but for other people that, you know, it's a modern convenience that we learned of through COVID. And I don't think we should do away with it. I think it's a helpful accommodation to people. And I don't think it's a problem that somebody doesn't want to come in. They might be doing something. They might be taking care of their children while their wife goes to work at night, or they might be doing other things and they want to still comment or attend. And I think it's an available option for people that they should be able to use it. And we should too. I should be able to, as a liaison, attend a meeting remotely, because sometimes that's what I have to do, because I'm not back in the community. I'm at my job. So I think we should have the availability to do it when we need to too. It's ideal that we're here, and I think it's the best way because it just functions better. But you know, I think that it's a tool that's available. And I'm just kind of repeating myself, but you know, we've talked about it before, and we talked about putting limits and things like that. You already have the capability as a chair to see how many people are of it, you know, want to comment and put a time limit on it, things like that. But I wasn't even in favor the last time we talked about it, about time limits, because I think it's again, the way we want to draw people in to participate, and we've gotten more participation through this medium, and I think we should keep it. I think we should keep it going.
For every meeting?
For every one of our meetings, you mean? Yeah, I mean, I think we should keep it available, definitely. And I think we should keep the option available if someone wants to make public comment. But there's ways to put, you know, I guess, guardrails in place, even for a Zoom. You could do it as a webinar for people that want to make a public comment, so that they identify their name and their address, so Mr. Gilberto knows in advance who he's going to, you know, allow to chat. I mean, there's ways to do it. I'm not an expert by any means on the technology, but I also don't think it's fair to put it upon Mr. Gilberto to have to sort these things through. He's our town administrator, and we have tech people that should be able to get it smoothly operating for us.
Mr. Waller?
I agree with Kate. I think it's transparency is good. I think people should be able to participate. I think it's brought in more people than not by having the accessibility. And I think what you're even doing tonight is what I commonly see is that everybody's on mute, and that you let them come in through the chat and you screen them before they get any further. So I think that alone does a lot. But I've been saying is just like you, that Michael has so much on the plate. We need his full attention, and not just at the computer. We need his full attention to be part of the discussion. And so we should have somebody who's running that and taking care of the technology, so he's freed up from not having to do so many different things. It's way too confusing. But I think that, you know, like what you're doing right now, they until you let them, I mean, they can talk in the chat, but until you unmute them, they can't just drop in.
But they'll figure out how to get around it.
Then that happens, I guess we'd have to figure that out, you know, but I've never seen that happen. I've never seen that happen in a meeting, in all the Zoom meetings I've ever done, where they're trying to prevent Zoom bombs. I've never seen that happen where somebody's got around. And I've been in a lot of meetings. So far I haven't seen that. If it happens, I guess we have to reconsider, but in the meantime, I think it's good to have people be able to participate and, you know, in a way that's just not just one-way street, but they get to participate back and forth, even on a limited basis. Some people just can't get out of the house. You know, we have older people who, you know, they're not going to drive at night, and we certainly burn the night.
But they can watch it.
What's that?
They can watch it.
Yeah, but they can't interact. They can't interact through the TV.
Really scary.
I have a quick question. I know you're next, but it's a question that maybe, well, why did all these other communities not do it? Reading, I mean, Reading, Reading's like a serious, so I'm not gonna even, but why these other communities? I'm just curious, because it's.
Probably for this reason.
Because you listed all of them, meaning, I'm just saying that
Probably easier.
when you're gonna, but when, no, but when you're gonna be the outlier, you gotta have concrete data, not just because, well, I want to. There's gotta be something that went in that these other communities said, no way. So I'm just curious if we could, not for tonight, if we could just be like, why'd you do it? Or why won't you allow Zoom, right? Because we're not the only enlightened ones in the North Shore. So I'm just curious.
Yeah, I have no idea why.
Mr. O'Leary? Mr. O'Leary?
I'm inclined to support Zoom. To me, I think the ability for the public to interact with us without having to be present in the room is important. You know, they just want to come and observe. You know, they want to come and participate, or they want to, public hearing-wise, you know, I think you provide opportunities for far more people to participate in a public hearing. Think about the dog hearing we
But
had.
we could still do that.
I understand, but you know, to me, you need to be consistent.
Yeah,
You know,
you gotta
people
be
shouldn't have to check the website or be concerned about, you know, how come they're not doing it tonight? What are they hiding? And to me, it raises more suspicions if you're going to be, either you do it or you don't do it. You know, and to me, the technology is here. I think one of the good things that came out of the pandemic, if there was anything good, was that this technology has progressed significantly. And what we're doing now is reacting to a few ignorant knuckleheads, you know, who are rude and indecent and, you know, offensive. I don't think that should be a spoiler for the ability to. This isn't just the future. This is now. You know, this is something. The technology is here and it can be controlled. And I agree 100%. This gentleman over here should not be preoccupied with what's happening. You know, with doing this. We should have someone here to handle the meetings for us. Plain and simple. He shouldn't be preoccupied. He's an active participant and a vital participant in everything we do here. And it's a distraction. It's a terrible distraction. And it's a disservice to him. It's a disservice to us, the community as a whole. So, you know, we should expend the resources to get someone else in here to take over this technology requirements. And I believe there are, again, I am far from an expert on this, but there are safeguards that can be put in place to control who's going to be participating, how they're going to be participating, and how they have to identify themselves. So to me, I think it's a wonderful thing that I don't care if it's 2 people or 22 people or 200 people that want to participate here, or even just observe through this mechanism rather than NORCAM or sitting here. I think this is something that we're going to have to react to anyway. We're far from ahead of the curve. We should at least be participating in it and utilizing it. And I think it's a valuable resource, community resource from transparency standpoint and public service standpoint. So I'm in favor of continuing on a regular basis, and I think we need to be consistent in how we're going to do it. And again, if the board decides to eliminate it, to me it's an all or nothing at this point, because otherwise you're setting it up, you're taking it down. He's going to be worried about it. And again, he shouldn't be concerned about it. He should be concerned with getting somebody in here that's capable of handling it, period.
I'm inclined to agree that it's either going to be all or nothing. That I can.
So if I mean, I'm one of 5, as Mrs. Ming Kelly loves to say. I am one of 5, and I am looking like the outlier, but we just talked about budget. We just talked about having to tighten up, and now we want to bring somebody in and have to pay them at our meetings and upgrade our technology and spend money. I don't think it's necessary. I think this was an important thing during COVID when people were afraid to be around other people, and there were a lot of reasons why it was a very good thing during COVID. COVID is over. As it was known, it's a flu now, so, you know, you wouldn't come out with the flu. It's not necessary. We have NORCAM, they can watch the meetings. You know, we never had it before COVID. You could come to the meeting, If you can't come to the meeting, watch it on NORCAM. This is stressful for our town administrator to have to do this. I don't see the necessity for it anymore. So if we had the funds and we had all the money and we could, hire our technology and get better technology and be always ahead of the hackers, great, let's do it, but we don't. We're talking about budget limitations right now, so I don't see spending that kind of money on that. I don't think it's necessary, but I'm one of five.
I will say, there's easier ways, like Ms. Menni-Pelli mentioned, and I don't know is Reading still using Zoom? I'm assuming they're using, I don't know,
Zoom.
so they haven't moved on, okay. And they are much more, like WebEx is one we use a lot, where, yeah, you actually, you have to register, which I don't think it's a big ask, right? You have to register with and you can force a registration with email address, home address, and the thing is that, and again, it's an extra step. So this is where I think maybe the happy medium is, to secure it so we can still provide it, but it's just gonna be one extra step because some of those have a verification code. That's how pretty much you know that if you're gonna go in and do it, you're gonna have to really put on a good show to get into the meeting in the first place. So I think maybe that's the happy medium, but,
As it is now, would you want to continue?
I think, like I said, I think the in-person works well. And again, I'm curious and hopefully maybe we can continue the conversation. I am curious of why these other communities aren't doing it. I'm just, they're just like us, a lot of these neighboring communities. So I'm just curious if there was like one potential reason that dominoed everybody to kind of follow each person's lead, who knows? But I do think if the meeting by meeting, maybe after listening to Mr. O'Leary, yeah, I think that would be difficult. I think it's got to be the kind of all or nothing. Kind of like I think CPC did that. It's all like
They don't have.
they don't have Zoom. They went back all to in person, right? But I think it gave some clarity though, right? You know it's going to be in person. That's it. So, but
That's why I can't do my liaison work. Because I'm somewhere else when they're meeting, instead of having the capability to sit in by Zoom and in case I need to bring something to them. Because they have a meeting earlier in the time frame. So same thing with EDC. I know that's just for my convenience, but I also disagree that we absolutely, if we don't have IT that's capable, then we should replace with capable people that can come here and show up and help do this. If our IT isn't capable.
No, well, I don't think it's capability. I think
It's definitely capability.
We'd have to
because
pay them to be here for the meeting.
We have to
We
get.
basically have two people. I mean, so as far as, if you're going to schedule someone to work 6 to midnight.
Right.
Every other Monday, then, we can contract it out too. But, as far as the expense associated with it, we were talking earlier this evening about, a potential override. We're talking about a sewer project. We're talking about some major programs here. You're talking about the fire station thing. You're talking about the need to get public education and information out to people. And this is a valuable piece of technology. Many of the people who participate here are also opinion leaders in the community and, share the information with a lot of other people. And this is a valuable resource, and the cost associated with it in order to educate the public, I think, is pretty small. So, if we have to hire an outside contractor to handle this for us, then, okay.
We have said this over and over and over again.
Yeah.
The need to have someone other than our TA doing the website.
Yeah, it can't
We said
continue
this.
like this.
But
We're all in agreement.
We all agree that it can't continue like
But we
this.
can't say, but we
I
can't,
believe so.
but we can't sit and say, well, budget cut here, budget cut here.
Exactly.
No, that's necessary for every
For
reason.
communication. Yeah.
Beyond just public communication, public safety communication. You're not gonna have your trash picked up. You're gonna have, that's so important. We're trying to do the reverse 911s for a lot of that, but there are still people that actually look for that updated information, real time. You know, today I need to know the answer, I want to look at it today. And that's all stuff that we've talked about, that we need someone, and that's a valuable person we should be recruiting to do all of these things.
You know, it's an
for
essential
us.
resource that's needed in this day and age, plain and simple, who should be able to handle this as a small
Yes,
portion of the job.
Right.
So in the meantime, I mean, now you're talking about trying to find someone, hire someone, get them in here. I mean, in the meantime, are we going to continue doing this?
Let us know what do you see as the solution? I mean, you know, what do you think it would take to do it? You know, and timeline, you know, do you have any professional services funds available for the rest of the fiscal year to get it going? I don't know. They're all rhetorical, you don't have to answer.
We can tell by his face that he usually doesn't make what the answers are. No.
I appreciate the concern for the effort, and I agree it would be ideal to have someone else doing it. I can tell you from talking to my colleagues, the setup you see right here is not unique to this community. I believe the superintendent is still doing the meetings for the school committee. You know, we're not unique in this setup. I don't think having somebody else at the computer is going to stop the issues from happening.
No.
You know, I think, you know, we have things sort of, you know, tightened up, I'll say, or locked down, you know, for this evening's meetings. I have, you know, a hand up that's up there. I have 2-3 comments that have come in the chat that I'll share with you. You know, I'll talk with the IT staff about, you know, what is a good interim step to try to address this, but I don't want folks, it will help to have someone here doing it, no doubt about it, but we do have a staff of 2, you know, both employees have, you know, young families. To ask them to commit to 11,
Right.
10 plus at night is a big ask, but, you know, I'll talk with them about that, and if not, we can look at another scenario for it. But it won't make the Zoom bombing issue go away. You have folks who are able to mask their identity, trying to access this meeting. They're not required to identify themselves. I mean, I can lock the meeting down 8 different ways. The problem is it loses its ability to be a public meeting. So, you know, some of the technology that's out there, it's not, it's in direct conflict with the idea of the public forum we're talking about. So I just want to, you know, set some expectations. But I will say I will talk with the finance director and the IT staff about, you know, what makes sense here to structure this a little bit better moving forward, even if it's only on a temporary basis for us. There are other comments here. When you're ready to get to them, whether you want to take them on the public comment or not, but
Are they related to this?
they are. Yep, they're all
conversation?
related to this, I believe. One is a raised hand, the other are written comments.
So public comment is next, so let's finish up our discussion
Okay.
with the board, and then we'll do that.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Just on the communities that might not have it anymore, maybe they implemented a policy on it, because they always had the ability to do that, the executive board or the executive officer prior to this, but it was more for members to be able to join remotely, and that's what the extension to March 31st of 25 is. For members of the public bodies, they don't need a reason, they're permitted now to do that until that time. And I thought the hope was so that there'd be some more permanent, the law would be either more permanent or just permanently repealed, because they keep extending it and extending it and extending it. But there's always was the capability to issue a policy on the availability of remote attendance by the public body member, and there were reasons built in for that. You know, couldn't be more than a certain number of times, and there had to be, you know, illness or, you know, not in the area or something like that. So it was always built into the open meeting law to have that policy or the regulations, but this just eliminated the need for a quorum of the members and eliminated the need for a reason to attend remotely.
Right.
But just in terms of your point, there was nothing built in there that said you had to have the public ability to, but it was just a natural consequence of the members being allowed to attend it remotely. Certainly, members of the public should be allowed to too, to participate beyond just what we already have. So they might have already issued a policy on it ahead of waiting on what's happening with the law.
So could I suggest that we do a little research on those other towns and find out what their reasoning was? Can we do that?
Sure.
And continue the conversation. And in the meantime, you'll talk with IT and finance director, see if, because this, I just don't see that it continues like this. It's stressful on you. This is a lot of work. It's going to get hacked again. They're going to figure out how to get back in. So if the board chooses to continue, I think it has to continue differently. It needs to change. It needs to be a better situation. Is that agreed?
As good as we can get it.
If there can be enhancements, great, but I think it needs to continue. I think nobody's opposed to improvements, but I think the majority is in favor of continuing.
Yes, I see that. All right. We will talk again. And public comment.
So, Madam Chair, I have 3 written chat comments and I believe 1 resident seeking recognition with a raised hand. And both are familiar names to us. I
Okay, you're
believe so.
comfortable with it?
And,
But Madam Chair, you also ask the person to state their name and address. It's supposed to be in the record too of who's providing comment. It's supposed to be in our minutes. So I think we should keep those requirements up and we should be looking for those in our minutes to make sure that that's recorded too, because I think those are important keys here, that we see the name, so we're just not asking the person to state their name and address for the record. I don't think we should lose those standards or requirements.
Okay. So, when we let them in, could we have them state their name and?
So one is a written chat, and the individual has indicated they're unable to.
So you're not having them talk, okay.
Only because that's what they've asked.
Okay,
And I've asked Mr. Austin to confirm his residential address. He's the first to offer, I think it's 3 comments. I'll wait for that to come in, maybe read his comments, and then we'll just add it, because I think we all know Mr. Austin is resident.
But is that the person in the chat?
It's a person in the chat.
Then you should chat back, you state your name and your address for the record.
I've asked him to do so.
Because you have to declare it so it gets into our minutes.
I mean, I can wait for him to respond if you'd like.
no, you can go ahead, you know.
Okay, I'll read the comments. Select Board has no obligation to allow public comment. North Reading Select Board should be commended for always allowing public comment, even for their most vocal opponents. NORCAM is an amazing resource for all North Reading residents. If the idea is to allow Zoom just for remote viewing, it is not worth the risk or distraction to allow a Zoom live feed versus a NORCAM video that is generally published within 24 hours. The benefit of Zoom is allowing citizens to participate even if they cannot attend. The ability to allow valuable input from community members that may not otherwise be able to participate is worth the risk of having to hear some terrible things if terrible people temporarily defeat filters. For any meeting that the Select Board sees fit to include public comment on the agenda, remote participation should be allowed. Listening to ridiculous trolls view hate is terrible and it should be mitigated, but participation in Select Board meetings is not widespread. Reducing the well-meaning public's ability to participate is too high a price to pay to filter out stupidity. He then asked if I could share the comments during public comment. He then wrote, signed Adam Austin, 403 Vanguard Drive, White Sands, Missile Range, New Mexico, 88002.
All of that was from Mr. Austin?
Correct, yes.
What was the address?
New Mexico.
403 Vanguard Drive, White Sands, Missile Range, New Mexico, 88002.
Okay.
There's also a raised hand from Valerie
Visiting someone.
Valerie
where?
Schiavone. You can see Ms. Schiavone's up there. Her name is familiar to us.
Okay, yes.
I'm going to ask her if she can unmute to speak. Valerie, can you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes,
can.
can you state your address, Valerie?
Sure. This is Valerie Schiavone. I am at 7 Greenbrier Drive, and I appreciate being able to participate in tonight's meeting. I had to join late, so I was just listening to Catherine's comments. I feel as though it's 2024 and the pandemic occurred in 2020, so the fact that we're still talking about people being able to communicate and participate via Zoom 4 years later or 3 years later needs to be addressed as soon as possible with people's schedules. Like, this was the first time I was able to participate tonight. I can't always organize my time around the select board, though that doesn't mean that I'm not interested and wanting to be informed of what goes on in my town. So that's why I'm participating tonight, and I sort of feel as though there needs to be more attention to having others participate without worrying about Zoom bombing and being able to hear and the echo in the room and all of these things 3 years later.
So true.
So
I think
I'm not sure where
that's
you
my comment.
I'm not sure where you stand, Valerie. I'm not really clear. Are you saying we should continue Zoom or?
Yes, I feel like Zoom should be continued and supported, and I feel as though, again, 3 years later, the pandemic started in 2020. It's 2024 now, and if we're still dealing with the same issues that people can't hear and people aren't able to attend because of Zoom bombing, that is on the onus of the select board in the town to support being able to have everyone participate. And I don't feel like it's Michael's responsibility to have to sort of referee people participating and also his job. I feel as though 3 years later, this should have been addressed and somebody needs to have responsibility for managing technology.
Okay, thank you. But you come in person.
Yes, because I can't hear that gentleman.
I know.
He talks so soft.
You can't hear Mr.
You think the
O'Leary.
women I couldn't hear, but I can't hear him because he has a softer voice, that's all.
Did we have another?
You're talking to Mr. O'Leary? You
Yes.
can't hear Mr. O'Leary?
Mr.
But I
O'Leary
can't
cannot
because
be
there's no
heard.
microphone next to him, and he speaks soft, he's speaking to you. I mean, so it's not like he's doing a speech.
Soft spoken.
Some people consider
So I
that a
have to
blessing.
come.
Yeah, some people consider that a blessing, Paul.
Yeah.
Did you have another
Nope,
comment?
that was all
it.
from,
That was
all from the
on
virtual
Zoom.
world.
And did you have anything you wanted to say?
Yes, I do. Paul De Niro,
Come on up here to the microphone.
402 Park
everybody
Street,
can
Paul
hear.
De Niro. This the husband?
It's,
I'm thinking the doctor, the last person that couldn't hear.
It doesn't.
It's
But
NORCAM.
that's the
It's
one for NORCAM.
It's
Okay.
not for the room.
Still
Oh,
speak
oh.
loud, please.
Go right in front of the microphone.
Oh, you said it wasn't on?
No, it's for NORCAM. It's for.
Oh, okay, okay. You know, since you hold these things at the end of the thing, you forget what you're up here for. The first point I wanted to make is when the gentleman in the school committee there was
Mr.
speaking,
Buckley.
and Mr. Studo was speaking, there's a binary, is that the right word, option, either A or B,
Yeah.
and let the townspeople decide. Well, I think you're letting the townspeople down, because they're looking to you as the president. I don't know what, if you were gonna say you were part of a company, would you be a president, a vice president, a salesperson? What do you think your title would be?
Janitor.
What is it? Janitor. Because I have a hard time understanding it. I owned a business, so I know what business is like. So I look at you as you're a president, you're a vice president, you're something like that. So anyway, I think people are looking for solutions. Now, you might not have the solution today because you need money. California's on Prop 2.5, that's a state. I don't know about the towns and stuff, it's a whole different thing, but they're still on it. I think the Prop 2.5 is a good thing. It does regulate things, but that's what townspeople want. They want taxes. We're paying high taxes as it is. And so, you know, people love to have that police cop there, so it's not going out of whack. And I think I said one time before to Mr. O'Leary, you know, maybe we raise the debt limit, if that's what you call it, on Prop 2.5 for 1 year. Maybe you don't take off all the Band-Aids, but you take a few off and you put it on, and then put it back on again, instead of a wastewater system. But anyway, so I think there has to be a joint. Everyone's going to be on the same page, and everyone has to have the same goal. And so you have to go to every department in town and say, listen, if you had to cut costs, cut 5% or 10%, what would you do? We're not going to do it. This is just a sample thing, and see what people come back with, see what's possible, and then see what you can do as far as raising tax money. You got to do both. You can't say, well, we're going to just have to put it on the backs of the townspeople. You're going to say, what the hell do you guys do? It's no solution. It's saying, hey, you want to pay for this new truck? So I think, and the other thing I think is, I think it'd be worth your while to have about 7 people from the outside who have business experience come in and sit down with that young lady or the other gentleman here. I think he's the finance guy, right?
Don Keller, yes.
Yeah, and so just to get an understanding of what happens in a town, you know, the different chart of accounts and where the money comes from, you know, besides the tax money and so. And then, you know, we could look at it, get some ideas, and maybe even we can talk to the townspeople, so put it in a way that they understand it. They're certainly not going to understand the damn thing. You're saying, oh, you want to raise taxes or you want to raise this? They don't know. The average person doesn't have that kind of experience. So that's the main thing I wanted to say. And I had some other good things. I forget what they are now.
Well, we're here in 3 weeks, so.
Was that?
We'll be here in 3 weeks again.
Oh, I want to talk to you about the Zoom. My daughter uses Zoom every day. She does rock camps, fantasy rock camps and stuff. And you know, you don't need an administrator to come in and manage Zoom. All you need to do here is to customize it. You just have to find out how to shut people down, how to permit people to come in, and you customize it to work for you. You don't need someone to go over the whole thing, pull out all the wires and start from new. You don't need a full-time person. And so, and that's easily done. And to answer your question, why do all these towns have something else? Why do you have Zoom? There was a better salesperson than what you dealt with. I'm not saying you dealt with it, but the town of North Reading dealt with a salesperson. The other salesperson went to all the towns. I guarantee you, they didn't know any more than North Reading did when they bought the Zoom. They just knew it was going to help the town communicate and everything else, and so that's why they bought it. Nothing moves in this world without a salesperson involved.
That's fair.
All right. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, well, I'm not usually in the habit of commenting on public comments, but that being said, I think your suggestions are very good in relation to the budget issue, but you have to keep in mind that everybody that's sitting here are also part of the public. You know, we all have varying different backgrounds. The school committee, very different backgrounds. We have an appointed economic development committee who's out there trying to come up with ideas as to how we can increase our tax revenue other than through tax dollars. So we've got these working groups going, we have appointed committees, not just elected committees, all working on it anyway. And then we have people like yourself who, found an interest in recent times, which is wonderful, and comes and participates. We love it. It's great, So, and I think what you're going to find for the June town meeting is that you're going to see the leaders of your community. We're more like the board of directors here. What role do we play? We're like the board of directors. We will present to the public a recommendation as to what we see, as to what we believe we should be doing as a community. But we also have an obligation to present a balanced budget. So you're going to have two choices.
Yeah.
Really, you're going to have two choices. So we're going to do that. We will do what you're asking.
Yeah, but you're not necessarily asked to look at the books and find the problem yourself. You're not, that's not your job.
Sure it is. That's part of our job, is oversight.
Okay. Well, that's what, if the people know that you've done that, and you've gone through and you've looked at all the ways you can make cuts without laying people off. So, let's say there's going to be 15 people retiring this year. Well, how many people can we not hire back? Right?
We do that. We do that annually, and maybe we don't do a good job of communicating.
Yeah, I've never heard that.
I know. No, what we do is we don't fill positions at times. We have budgeted positions, but because of budget constraints, we don't fill the positions. School department does the exact same thing. So we're living within our means and within the appropriation the town meeting gets us. I guess we don't do a good job of saying, within our structure, personnel structure here, we have X number of positions, of which 13 are not filled.
Right.
So we don't say that all the time.
Well, I missed the part where I think it was you that said you got $42 million back. You didn't have to spend it or something like that. I forget what that was.
Yeah, additional funding to offset the cost of the new school down in Wakefield, right.
Okay, Wakefield.
We didn't get
That's the
that back,
vocational
though.
school.
No, that wasn't ours, it's member communities.
The member communities across the board are going to realize the savings. They have to finance less.
Yeah.
So it's going to cost us less. We voted to appropriate more, and we're going to have to pay for less. It's a
So
great
anyway,
deal.
that's my whole point, is that the townspeople have to feel as though everyone's on the same page, and they're working their damnedest to get results to happen. It's easy to say, okay, lift this and let the fresh water in. But, townspeople are looking for something more advanced. I've had experience running a business for 38 years. I taken a company out of Chapter 11 that owed $200,000, had 10 employees. I had 26 employees at the time. They did have to cut people. It took 4 years. They turned that company around. It was very profitable.
And I have a similar story that I can share with you too.
Yeah, but we all.
And I know, but not tonight. But not tonight.
Yeah.
But not tonight. So
Anyway.
there are a lot of us
We have
around
to
like
work
that.
together.
Thank you.
And I guess when you hear you're buying land and stuff, saying, that money can be going to here or something like that,
But that's why we leave it to the town. The town decides.
No, I know that, I
Because it's
know
your
that.
tax dollars
But-
and ours.
But, that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you.
Thank you. Legal bills.
Legal bills.
Okay, Madam Chair, I move to approve legal bills for December 2023 in the amount of $10,603.26 as follows. General, $9,887.76. Labor, $352.50. 20L, $363 for a total of $10,603.26.
Second?
I have a motion, I have a second by Mr. O'Leary. Any further discussion? Hearing none.
Thank you,
All
Rick.
in favor?
Aye.
Is that the only one? And town administration report?
I'll only state that over the course of this evening's meeting, which is now 5 or so hours long, the snowfall amounts for North Reading have been downgraded twice.
Oh.
And what was a winter storm warning is now merely a winter weather advisory. Unfortunately, a number of decisions have been made by folks,
Right.
including me, to close non-emergency services tomorrow. And we've already made those adjustments for those services. Same is true in a number of communities nearby. Same is true for nearly 500 school districts statewide. So it's been a while since we got burned this badly by the forecast. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. But in this instance, it looks like.
No, but this storm, I follow this guy who does like modeling, like his full-time job for ski forecast, and he looks at like 15 different models. And when he gets it wrong, you know, like this thing, he just said it moved faster than anyone anticipated, south and east. Like everything. As of this morning, it was still
Yeah, it was 8 to
7 to
12.
13
8 to
inches.
12.
Yeah.
Well,
So
that's good for the.
it's good for the snow and ice budget, although
Right.
it may still snow for a number of hours, which is, you know,
But you
can be
never know.
costly.
Maybe we
I
can
mean,
hide
we
the
always get a
tree
couple
guy,
inches
though.
more. I mean, Baldwin will get all rain. That guy will still charge me $200.
So if the forecast pans out as it stands right now, to those who are impacted by the closures, we certainly apologize, but there's no magic wand. We have access to the same meteorologic information that the rest of the public does, the same news reports and same weather reports, and we make decisions as best we
I have a
can.
very important question.
So
Will the trash be picked up?
it will not be. Republic notified us at noontime today.
Everybody's gonna wanna know that question.
On Tuesday, they notified us they will not be collecting trash. I'm sure they similarly regret that decision at this point in time because it now delays collection
Right.
to Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and now Saturday. We did ask folks not to put their trash and recycling curbside until as late as possible tomorrow so that we don't inadvertently return it to their driveway with a plow. We asked folks to continue to do that and wait till the snow's ended to put their trash and recycling out. Other than that, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
He made that, I'll second.
Second.
I have a motion to adjourn, I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Ay, ay, ay.
Aye, aye.
Kids are home tomorrow.